Okay. Okay. I think we're live. Good morning, everyone. It's always nice to have a different table set up because it makes you see new faces. Today we're gonna start with, well, we'll see the order. The order might change depending on when Nana and Raju join, but we're gonna focus on continuing our conversation on deindustrialization that we started last week, specifically deindustrialization and also deindustrialization in a city like Philadelphia. And so I think Doc will lead us in continuing that discussion again. And we'll also touch a bit on China and how China has tried to solve the question of deindustrialization, reindustrialization, and we'll have an open discussion of whether what China did, if that's possible in the US and where we're currently at in the United States. But we also are going to, depending on when Nanta and Raju join, they're going to be zooming in from India. And they recently, this past week, had an event celebrating the 100th anniversary of Patrice Lumumba. They had an event and an exhibit in India, and they're going to give a report back to us about the event on Patrice Lumumba and how it's related to the struggle against neocolonialism today. So I think we'll begin with deindustrialization, and I'll hand over to Doc, who I think wants to play some.
We'll do deindustrialization. We'll talk about Donny Hathaway.
Oh, well, yeah, we should talk about Donny Hathaway. You're right.
Yeah, it'll relate to the future and the way we'll have to look at resolving the problem of deindustrialization. But last week, we played and listened to Donny Hathaway, and it came across to me that when I listened back that we couldn't hear the Donny Hathaway in the live stream. So could we do it through your computer? You think it'll come across?
Do you want it to also be good quality on the actual live stream itself?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll join the StreamYard. Or do you want to play it from... Okay, I'll join the StreamYard, and then I'll share it with the StreamYard too. Okay, so we should make sure your two computers are muted then. Myself on the stage. I think through my computer.
Yeah, but how used to get it? I think mine has to be not muted.
No. I think.
My mic is muted.
Why don't you just play and share the audio?
That's when we did. That's when we did.
Oh, like one of their computer shares? Well, I was going to share it from my computer because I'm in the StreamYard.
Yeah, but when you share you can share your screen and share the audio.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. I think. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Let's see.
Tell me before you play, because I just want to say something about Donny Hathaway and why an artist like him is so important in times like these. Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is kind of a prelude to our discussion of deindustrialization and what it will take to rebuild the U.S. society and the U.S. people after 4 decades of ruthless deindustrialization, which I will explain. But now I want to read something that I wrote about a decade ago. And I was writing then as a response to deindustrialization and what it would take to reindustrialize the country. And Emily found it and she asked me about it and she said, would you write it the same way now? And I said, no, I would not. And I'll explain that. But at any rate, Donny Hathaway and artists like him are very important to our understanding of the spiritual life world of the people. By the spiritual life world, we're not talking about a religion or going to church or anything like that, although that's part of it. We're talking about how the people see themselves in the world in the future. And literally, have they separated themselves from the ruling elite in terms of the ruling elite's proposals and outlook for the future. And so it is this fight over culture and art is a central part of the ideological struggle. We know this. I think we just have to perfect our understanding of this and use it as a way to measure the capacity of the people to resist. And the United States is gifted with some of the best art and music ever produced. Figures like Donny Hathaway have to be put in a special place in this universe of art. That is to say that everything is not the same. And it does make a difference whether or not the footprint of Donny Hathaway is large and deep, as opposed to, let us say, the footprint of Jay-Z. Or as, you know, some people who want to have everything and not make a choice about anything would say, well, we could have them both, you know, or Megan Thee Stallion, she likes Donny Hathaway, or you know, Cardi B, or whatever. They're sophisticated enough. What you see of them is only their performative public presence. Well, but what we're saying is, and for us, I would think, going forward, you have to make a choice about what is culture, what is art, and what enhances the people's capacity to resist. And culture is a very important part of it. That is why when we talk about deindustrialization, we will talk about the multiple attacks upon working people to break them, to impoverish them, and then give them pop culture that distracts them from understanding what has happened and is happening to them. I just wanted to just draw attention finally to Donny Hathaway, who is a special figure, a special artist, albeit not known enough. He is special for that time and for this. I mentioned the last time that so many singers and musicians and artists, including Michael Clemens, whose art we went to see last week, are deeply influenced by Donny Hathaway, but also Luther Vandross. And not just a part of Donny, it's like Donny Hathaway sung in his voice, in the voice of Luther. I contend that Stevie Wonder took Donny completely. The style of singing, the way of delivering a song, and made it his own. I would say, though not as well as Donny did. And what makes Donny Hathaway so special, and why I think we should, well, I guess elevate him, make him better known. Well, just from the standpoint of his worldview and his optimism, the song we're going to listen to, what's the title of it again, Emily?
Take a love song.
Take a Love Song. And as I said last week, when he says a love song, is he talking only about romantic love? Or is he talking about a song that expresses love for humanity? And I think the way he presents it, and you'll hear, and the introduction, the piano introduction, by the way, it is him playing the piano. Sometimes I think he plays the piano as well as Nina Simone does. They're the two great ones who sang and played this virtuosic piano. But he says, take a love song and sing it. And then he says, take a smile and wear it. And then further on, he says, take a strong heart and use it. I think that's the way it is phrased. But then it is his, because singing is interpreting. Well, if there's nothing to interpret, like with most pop singing, most Motown, most Philly sound good, enjoyable, but it is not music that always calls for deep reflection and interpretation. Great singers are interpreters, of lyrics, of chords, of how to phrase something. A group of words can take on a different meaning depending upon how they are phrased. You often hear musicians talk about his phrasing, her phrasing. Very, very important. And this is why singing is such a great art when it is really done right, because you're dealing with lyrics, poetic lyrics, alongside of chord structures, chords and notes and chord changes. And it is the changes. You often hear jazz musicians talking about the changes. That is when you change the chord. You know what I'm saying? A singer who is singing great music has to be concerned with the lyrics and the chord changes and how the two interact to create something beautiful and wonderful. And Donny Hathaway, and this is also a sign of his high intelligence, the articulation of the words. A lot of singers think, well, I'll have to know the words. I can just read what. No, you must know the words and their meanings, because it is there that to understand the significance of words is manifested in the way you articulate words. Donnie is articulate. We know everything that he is saying, and that's because he pays acute attention to words. But this song is a special song. It's arranged and orchestrated particularly beautifully. I could stop it different, but I don't want to do that. The orchestration, I was particularly taken by the horns. There's a part where the horns come in and the clarity, and I think the trumpet, trombone, and maybe a tenor saxophone, but the horns were very important. And it ends, it's almost celebratory. And it's a song to encourage the masses of people to say in ways that it's very difficult to find in musical literature this. it crosses that line, or I don't even know that it's a line to be crossed, between the sacred and the secular.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's also the sign, really, of great African American singing,
Right.
where you can't differentiate between the sacred and the secular, between gods of the metropolis and God, you know, even if there were a difference. So I'll let Emily play this and just listen closely to it.
Take a warm smile and wear it, and take all the love I have just for you, and you'll find that it helps dreams come true for you and me too. Take a dream and build it. Take a strong heart and use it. Take the best of life's gifts, and you'll see when you do how the rest of the goodness in life finds its own way to you. Take a love song and sing it, yeah. Take the best of life's gifts, and you'll see when you do how the rest of the goodness in life finds its own way to you. Take a love song and sing it everywhere. Let it fill the air. Take a warm smile and wear it. You got to wear it. Take a glad dream and build it to the sky. Never, never lose it. song. Hey, love song and sing it.
You all can listen to this, when you're home. It's a magnificent song. It's a magnificent rendition, and I think such and it speaks to the spiritual needs of the people. And because I've been thinking a lot about the event at the Lucian Blackwell Library, Du Bois' art in the search for the Black gods of Philadelphia, which and I think it is a new and a different way to think about the struggle going forward, which is not a distraction, but I think it is completely anchored to the ways that Du Bois looked at the world and the New World movement of thought. So that's all I wanted to say. I don't know if Raju and Nandathar are available now, but I'll come back to this because I want to talk about this in relationship to deindustrialization and the pessimism of the ruling elite about whether there's a way out.
I think let's see. They said at 10:54, they said 12 minutes. So, so that would be, a few more minutes. Well, maybe we could have a discussion, a brief discussion of Donny Hathaway's.
Go ahead. Start with you.
Well, the one thing about Donny Hathaway I didn't pay attention to last time was actually the horns. Yeah, because I think I never really appreciated horns that much until we went to the United House of Prayer for All People. Like that was the first time I had actually, because usually when we have seen, so I've never really known jazz that well at all. And then when we go to shows and you see trios or like when you see trios or more, like maybe there's a saxophone, but you don't really see, sometimes there's a trumpet, but I feel like multiple horns together like made a big impact on me at the United House of Prayer for All People, because hearing it in Donny Hathaway's song made me realize that when we were at the United House of Prayer for All People, to see dozens of men of all ages playing such a triumphant instrument, like I don't even know how to describe the emotion, but it's really stuck out to me because it did sound like almost like a wave of optimism, like basically a wave of confidence of like, I've already seen, it's kind of like that vibe that King has at the end. Like I've been to the mountaintop and that made an impact on me in the song. And then, also the lyrics, like it's every time I listen to the song, new specific lyrics kind of have an impact on me of like take a love song like as a gift, like this give it, it's your gift, like love as this gift to give to the world. But also even the way he said, take a warm smile and wear it. But then he says, you got to wear it. That phrase of like, you got to do it. Like, and he says, like, use it until the day you die, where another way of saying what you said of crossing the line of the sacred and secular is like, in some ways it's a song that talks about the relationship between the individual and the eternal, like the individual and the collective, or the individual and the eternal. I don't know, I find it to be very revolutionary. Like,
Definitely.
Like it's not just a theological thing or a religious thing, but actually it's a very, like in some ways it's in a song, Donny Hathaway, he's almost giving like a way of understanding yourself as a part of the fabric of everything around you, like imbuing within you meaning. Like even this thing of like, you can't once you learn to love humanity, you also love yourself, or
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, like that relationship. So that's how I felt about the song.
Yeah, I guess many of us also live in such a pessimistic or individualistic society that even listening to Donny Hathaway, you kind of have to shift a little, where this is not the beauty and depth of it is almost unfamiliar in a hostile environment.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I think because of the hostility, it takes a moment to even begin to see and appreciate the song. And I think something just to reemphasize, I think from last week's discussion, is how you had said that love and beauty and freedom are not separate in the Black
Right.
consciousness. And I think this song also embodies that. Love, beauty, and freedom and the Black consciousness. And even back to, I guess, Emily emphasizing the sacred and secular that you had pointed out. I'm still thinking quite a bit about it because I think we're also trying to understand, such as the United House of Prayer, and how that is also connected to the history and the consciousness of Black folk. Because I think last week you had also mentioned how the Black church was an incubator for the straight arts. Did Donny Hathaway, I guess a question, I forget if you mentioned if Donny Hathaway had come out of the church as well.
Definitely. And he sings like, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, you never know when they're singing about God or what way they're singing about God. Are they singing about the secular, God's presence in the secular world, or God as the all perfect thing to which we strive, the perfection to which man and woman strive? And then, of course, the God of the metropolis, the God of hope, the God of beauty, the God of freedom, the God of hope that it will be a better day, and so on. And I think that not only has the ruling elite, for over a couple of centuries or a century, turned their backs on the white gods, but they turned their backs on beauty. And I'll try to tell when I talk about deindustrialization and people like Peter Thiel. These are loveless people who do not know beauty and don't care, who believe that there is a future without art and without beauty.
Right.
They honestly do. And that, yeah, but you're absolutely, I find it very interesting what you said, Alice, that it takes a little while for you all to understand what's going on in music like this. Could you say a little bit more about that?
I mean, maybe other people can also chime in, because I don't know if it's just something that I feel when I listen to this music, or if it's a general phenomenon in society. Because particularly among young people, I think one, for free school, for many of us in free school, we have been exposed to this music because of free school, because of you. And so I think there's less of that contrast than, say, people who have, in our generation, who have never heard this music.
Right.
But even then, sometimes it takes me, like a couple of seconds, a minute, to one where it's that you don't have this beauty, don't have a lot of beauty or appreciation of beauty in our day-to-day lives, where there is an attack on, like you had said, art, culture, and ideas. But then, yeah, like I think whether it's Donny Hathaway, whether it's others that we've talked about, it almost feels like a different world, or it is a different world. And as we have in Free School have talked about previously, it is that it's a double, I guess, there's the white social system and then there's the Black social system. And you're constantly shifting or navigating between the two worlds. Yeah, and I think that's why it takes a moment where I'm like, oh wait.
Yeah. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Now thinking when I heard that song, I saw him at a little small club in Hollywood. Let's see, about 20 people. So long ago, it was a $10 cover charge. The two gentlemen in the room. It was Donny Hathaway and the Pointer Sisters together. That was the best show. I mean, he sang that song and you could just feel it gave you goosebumps just seeing him singing and playing. And he seems to me poured his heart out in that song when he performed. He was a great, great performer. That's what I think to be.
Yeah.
Before any of you were born.
Yeah.
I would say, like, when I was listening to that, like John said, like, I just feel like my whole body like tingling and getting goosebumps, and I couldn't, like, I kind of wanted to just kind of like just spread my arms and just bask in beauty and like the clarity and the triumph, like almost celebration that like there would be like good things on the way, even in the midst of all the darkness that we see in the day to day. And it just makes me think of what this music could do to our current society if they were exposed to this more on the daily, and this was repeatedly being pushed to them, and how healing it would be with people.
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, remember last week I talked about a good percentage, if not the majority, of young Black men are on a death march, and they know it.
Absolutely.
And it's a death march that has been well rehearsed. They've seen their fathers and uncles and older brothers on that same march. And their lives are defined by this condition. And, you know, I often ask, you know, how do you talk to a young man who at 15 knows he's on a death march and knows that he will not live long? I mean, that is something for a young person to have consuming his consciousness. And such young men don't want to hear anything from anybody, I would say. And why should they? And so I asked myself, is it possible that music and art could speak to them in this way? Maybe not all, but I'm of the opinion that several things are at play or can be at play at the same time. First, the concept of Black gods of the working class. We can say of the metropolis, but in the finality, they are Black gods of the proletariat. And I know in my own coming up in the church, and as I reflect back upon how closely the church and the factory, the leader in the church was the leader in the factory, and in the community, she could be the head of the Girl Scouts, or he the head of the Boy Scout troop. But these were inseparable things. That the gods, the perfection that the proletariat seeks, and it does seek perfection.
Right.
Perfect love, perfect beauty, perfect freedom.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And you know, that's not something you can get from an economic analysis. You have to have sociology, and you have to know how to listen and hear, you know, the cries of the oppressed. But, you know, that's why, you know, to your question, and we should explore it, will there be an economic revolution, then a cultural or civilizational revolution, or must they occur simultaneously? You know, now I want to make an argument, but I agree with you, John. You know, sometimes you can get to a person through their heart, through their vulnerability. People, I find, are most vulnerable at the point of their heart.
Yeah.
The mind can play more tricks on you, or give, you know, I don't know how to put it.
You have different reasons to.
Yeah. Excuse you know. Yeah. But the heart, you know, is more honest, more truthful. And to the young man on a death march, what is his heart saying? You know, and I know, you know, and that's why I have to be careful. You know, it's easy to condemn young men who would go up on the street with people having a party and just start a shootout. I mean, it does not make sense. Of course it doesn't. But then at the level of that individual, we don't know him or her. But there's a point, I guess what I want to say, a point of vulnerability, but that is the point that we all are striving for the same thing. We're all striving for beauty. We're all striving for civilization, for freedom, for everybody, you know. So that's what I think Hathaway exemplifies.
I remember, I remember you sent me this song a couple of days ago, like I think a little, before last week's discussion, you sent me the song. And I remember hearing it and thinking that the song starts off, you know, in a very conversational tone, and then it builds and builds and builds in fervor till the point that it's almost a sermon, you know?
What song is this?
It's this one.
Oh, this one. Yes.
I feel the way that he starts it, very conversational. I feel like he's talking to me, and then he's talking to a lot of people.
I agree with that, yes.
And it's a very simple song structure, right? It's like four lines. And that's the structure that he uses over and over again, but it changes every single time. And I think my favorite line of this song is when he says, you know, take your dream and build it to the sky.
See, that's it. And that is it.
Yeah. And then he says, never lose it. And I think that he, like through this song, he acknowledges the reality of how we live and the struggle that we go through, but then he injects hope through every line. And that is what I think about when you say that, you know, like young black men don't want to listen to anybody telling them what to do, which is why I think it's really important for this art, this music to be heard, where, you know, you are acknowledging that this is our situation, but it's not the end. There is a sky, and you have to build towards that. Yeah, and I think Alice also had a point. I feel like I really needed to change how I thought about things to really understand this kind of music. I think without a kind of restructuring of my core principles and values, I couldn't really understand or get something from the music of, say, Donny Hathaway or Nina Simone.
I think Nandita Raj.
Oh yeah, Nandita and Raju joined, so maybe we can, before we continue on, we can come back to this conversation and first have them do a report, like share about their event, and the significance of the struggle against neocolonialism, and then we come back to Donny Hathaway and deindustrialization. So maybe I'll put the computer. Maybe I'll put it near John. Is that too far for you?
Oh.
Okay, I'll put it near John so everyone. Okay, everyone's looking at you now. But
You can hear me?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, are we on the speaker?
Hi. We can
Oh,
hear you.
okay. Yeah, it's nice to see everybody. I'm sorry we missed the conversation in the beginning because we underestimated how long it would take us to get back home. But it's nice to see everybody. I guess maybe I'll just start. It's kind of funny because I can't hear all of you. So, this year it's the centenary of the great Congolese and African freedom fighter Patrice Lumumba, and I remember that in the knowledge conference we had this conversation about how in this time, when the West is in crisis, and in some ways the West being in crisis also means that neocolonialism and the structures of neocolonialism are weaker. And it is in this time that man must know man. And, the question for us also in India is, how do we know other human beings, in Africa, in China, in Southeast Asia, in America? And of course, like we've discussed at the free school, the way to know another people, another civilization is to know their struggle for freedom. And it is through people like Patrice Lumumba that we can know the African people. And so that's why we decided to do this exhibition. And I don't know if maybe I can show you guys some images, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to see them. But I don't know, maybe you want to say something else about the...
No, you can go ahead and I can add later.
Okay, let me try and share my screen. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
You can see his picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the exhibition that we put together, it's going to be on at this kind of old institution in the city where we are based, and we are dedicating the exhibition to the memory of Patrice Lumumba and to the memory of P.S. Reddy. As kind of this human being who exemplified, I guess, the unity of Africa and Asia. And we also decided to cover 4 different liberation struggles and look at their leaders in some detail. So we looked at Patrice Lumumba of the Congo, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Amilcar Cabral of Guinea-Bissau, and Oliver Tambo from South Africa. So we tried to do, I guess we also discussed with Doc how there is a difference in the different colonies and the languages that people, ended up speaking during colonialism. So we tried to take different nations from across Africa. But maybe I can just show you some of the pictures that we included in the section on Lumumba. So one of the things that we realized in this, in doing the research for this, is just how, I guess, difficult the process of unity was in the Congo, like everywhere else, I guess. But the Congo was really divided into tribes. It was really a tribal-based society. And so when Lumumba was a young man, I mean, even like 30, 32 years old, there are all these different political parties, but a lot of them are based on ethnicity or on tribal basis. So here comes Lumumba, and like in 1958, he puts forward this idea, this vision, that the people of the Congo must not only identify with their tribe, but with being Congolese and with being, Africans. And, of course, he's influenced by Kwame Nkrumah because he also visits the first People's Pan-African Congress in Accra in 58. And so they have a, close relationship. But, unity as a weapon of struggle, and you really see it in Africa, where even in the Congo, the Belgians are trying to divide the people by playing upon their tribal divisions. And Lumumba's party is trying to unite them. So this is just a picture of Lumumba, I guess, giving a speech at one of his party meetings. And then they spend time among the people. They work in different villages. They try to spread this message of unity. And it's really the striking thing about his life is that in 58, he kind of comes up with this new vision for a political party, and 61 he's assassinated. So it's only this very short period of 3 years, and they really didn't have the time to like consolidate and train people to take over the state. But they did a lot of work among the people to try and educate them on the idea of unity, a Congolese nation. So this is a picture of Lumumba giving his Independence Day speech. And actually, I think that it was kind of a strategy on the part of the Belgians to give them independence soon, because they knew that the liberation forces were not strong enough to hold on to the state. And they, at the same time, they gave them freedom. They also supported all of these secessionist movements. So even when Lumumba is giving this Independence Day speech at the formal independence of the Congo, the president is this man, Kasavubu, who is basically, kind of pro-Belgian. And they didn't want Lumumba to speak at the independence ceremony, but he still gives this speech because Kasavubu speaks and he's praising the Belgians, and Lumumba gets fired up and says, no, I have to set the record straight. And I have to say that we have won our independence through struggle, through bloodshed, and we must not forget that, So this is a picture of him. Maybe I'll skip this. Yeah, but, like I said, the Belgians really, I think, undermined the process of them becoming independent. And pretty much a few months after they gained independence, there's a mutiny in the army because the Belgian generals of the army refused to give up control. So the Congolese people in the army mutiny against the generals. But also the Katanga region of the Congo, which is the most mineral rich, and it's where all of the most, rare resources are. It secedes. And of course, the leader of the secession is this man called the Shombe, who is supported by the Belgians. And the Belgian army is actually there, and the Americans are there. So Lumumba in this crisis, he goes to the UN. And I think, at that time, the UN, it was a new body. There was a lot of hope in what it could do. It had not yet taken on the form that we see in this time. So Lumumba goes to the UN, he says, we need help, you need to help us stabilize the situation in the Congo. So this is actually a picture of him at the UN at a press conference. And the Secretary General of the UN at this time was this man called Doug Hammarskjöld, who, this is a picture of him and Lumumba. But instead of, listening to Lumumba and I guess respecting the process of independence in the Congo, Doug Hammarskjöld actually starts to negotiate with the secessionists. So he travels to Katanga and he negotiates with the people who are, basically the Belgian-backed forces who are trying to secede from the Congo. And basically all of it, in all of this, what happens is that there's a military coup against Lumumba. This military general, Mobutu, comes to power, who would then go on to rule the Congo as a dictator for the next 30 years. And Lumumba is put in a UN safe house. And his supporters are in a different part of the Congo called Stanleyville. So in trying to go from his UN safe house to Stanleyville, he is captured by Mobutu's forces and taken to the region of, so maybe I'll show you that. So this is a picture of the Shombe with, in the corner, the white man in the corner is Doug Hammarskjöld, he's the UN Secretary General. These pictures were seen all over the world. After Lumumba is captured, he is the elected prime minister of the largest country in Africa. Recently had, fought for his people's independence, but he is tortured, he is taken around the country, made an example of, and they take him actually to the region that had seceded, to Katanga, and they murder him. And, the villages around the region where he was murdered, people became suspicious. And the Belgians who had gone and killed him, felt worried that there could be rebellion. So they actually dug him out and they dissolved his body in acid.
Right.
And only one tooth remained.
And dissolved his body.
Which the Belgians actually returned to his family maybe 2 years ago or something. So, the brutality of it and the white supremacy of it. And of course, when the news gets out about this, there are protests. All over the world. There are protests in India, there are protests all across Africa, in Europe, in South America, in Southeast Asia. You name it. People of the world really, and when the US, so actually the news didn't get out in the US till like a month later. But there's a protest in New York where Paul Robeson speaks. And there is that photo of him with Lumumba in the background. I don't know if you guys remember that. But that's from that protest that was held in New York. And Ralph Bunche was this, US diplomat who actually also served at the UN in the Congo. He apologizes for the protest. And the funny thing is that Lorraine Hansberry writes against him. So, it gives rise to all of this debate and discussion even within the US. I guess within the Black struggle. And Baldwin writes on it, Lorraine Hansberry writes on it, Paul Robeson speaks on it. But this beautiful young African, and he's only 35 when he's killed. But this beautiful young African, the hope for Africa, And following this, the Congo pretty much went into a dictatorship period. And of course, the dictatorship just means that the resources were controlled by the US and Europe. This is kind of the section we want to show on the Congo. But maybe I can just show you also this is a picture of the protests that were held in Ghana, in Accra. And, the signs say, Nkrumah shall reign forever. You kill Lumumba, we know. And these are protests that were held in Delhi. And the protest in Delhi was actually organized by the Congress Party. And Nehru was, a part of it. Nehru actually, after Lumumba was killed, Nehru sent in Indian troops to the Congo to suppress the secession in Katanga as part of the UN mission. And I think, for basically the Afro-Asiatic world, the Congo was like the biggest issue at that time, the biggest point of discussion, the biggest point of struggle. Yeah, but the reason we want to do this is because we are really living in a time when this history of the anti-colonial movements needs to be restudied and relooked at so that we can form new relationships. And we wanted to show Indians that they have an existing relationship to even African nations like the Congo. Um, and that it has been lost to some extent with the newer generations. But this is the history we must build upon. This is the history we must know. Um, yeah, do you want to add something?
Maybe just a couple of things. I mean, so at the I think what we're discovering through this, one of the things we're discovering through this is just how close all of these world movements were to each other. And I mean, Lumumba considered Kwame Nkrumah as a mentor, and you have many, many letters between them, with Nkrumah really saying, my brother Patrice, trying to guide him, trying to advise him.
Yes.
But then, as I was saying, when Lumumba is killed, everybody. Baldwin actually wrote an article in the New York Times in 1961, and the Boys talks about it. The Boys defends Lumumba, and and Nehru was in contact with them, and it's just this. And Lumumba, I think I'm pretty sure he has studied Gandhi. I mean, it's just these close relationships, this kind of Afro-Asiatic freedom struggle. And we're really discovering how, so when the protests in Delhi happened after Lumumba's murder, Indira Gandhi was the one who spoke on behalf of the Congress Party. And she said that we should have done it. She said we should have done more and we could have prevented this. And she said, I feel like somebody close to me has passed away. And it's really, it's been moving for us to discover this. But our exhibition was, I think it's been well received here. There's been a lot of interest from young people, and including we had some young African students come today from the Democratic Republic of Congo who were studying in India. Okay.
You guys can hear us still, right?
Yes.
You're kind of frozen, so.
Yes.
Oh,
We can
yes,
hear you.
yeah, we can.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I guess that's all I'll say. But I think we're just we're happy we did this, and we're really discovering a lot about the relationship between the freedom struggles, but also the viciousness of neocolonialism, the viciousness of imperialism.
Yeah.
How it operated. You have the UN mission coming in, but then it seems they're going to follow the rules. But then you have the Belgians, the CIA working from behind and trying to undermine everything. And I think Lumumba really became somebody who is close to the hearts of people around the world, and I think we're reaching it. There is a new generation in India which is interested, which wants to know more, and it wants to establish relationships with Africa. Yeah, that's all I say.
Yeah, just one last thing to end. What Raj was saying, how close these relationships were. In some ways, you could even say that although they took on different characteristics in different parts of Africa and Asia, it really was one struggle.
Yeah.
The level of contact between, and we were moved to find out the level of contact between Du Bois and Indian thinkers. But even Nkrumah and Nehru, just letters upon letters upon letters. and, coming to a common consensus on the world situation. And, you really not, when we talk about these struggles at this time, we don't think about the fact that they were interconnected to a point where it really was like one struggle. And instrumental to it, E.S. Reddy, not just him, people like E.S. Reddy, Romesh Chandra, these people who basically gave their lives to connecting human beings, despite their differences. And that struggle for a universal man, a man who is rooted but not limited by his own, direct, direct experience. A man who can really belong to humanity, like Paul Robeson, I guess. So, yeah, I guess we'll end there. But I wish you guys could see it, honestly.
Questions?
You mind if I say something? Congratulations, y'all, on doing this. The only regret I have is that we just couldn't do it here in Philly along with you all. This is an event that should have been celebrated worldwide. I don't even know if it's celebrated in the Congo. And you're right, the way you described Patrice Lumumba and the way you described the world's response to his assassination, because everyone knew that while they killed Patrice Lumumba, the point was to kill African independence.
Right.
And, it was a sad day around the world, including in Black America. But the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, an articulate young socialist who was aligning the Congo, the richest, largest nation on the continent, with the Soviet Union and Asia. And he was a manifestation of the Bandung spirit, taking it forward. The Congo is so rich that the Western empires have never accepted that it will be free and unified under single government. And they have been trying up till this very day to split off parts of the Congo. In this instance, it is Rwanda and Paul Kagame, backed up by US neocolonialists and imperialists. The Congo is so rich that the Congo River, if properly dammed and engineered, could produce enough electrical energy for the entire continent of Africa, for over 1 billion people. That is how rich that country is. And that is why the West will never allow it to develop on its own terms. I don't know whether you mentioned, but the Soviet Union, in the wake of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, established a Patrice Lumumba Friendship University that existed up until the time of Gorbachev, which raises another set of questions about who Gorbachev actually was. That university, I think, has been restored recently, but the damage was done. This was a school where young people from throughout Africa came to study alongside students from Asia and South America. Just my last point. In spite of the death of Lumumba in 1961, the sense was that we will soldier on. This will make us stronger. And Kwame Nkrumah writes a book that is published maybe in 1966, after he himself had been overthrown, a book entitled The Challenge of the Congo, and by which he meant the challenge to Africa. If Africa could not defend the Congo and Lumumba, Africa couldn't be defended, and he therefore called for unity. But we thought we could go on. But then, that was 14, but then there is the overthrowing of Nkrumah, the first nation that had been under colonial rule to have gotten independence. Ghana, 1957, he's overthrown by the same people that overthrew and assassinated Lumumba. And it wasn't just the Belgians. By this time, it's the United States and the CIA. They would be the main backing to Mobutu's regime that lasted for a number of years, few decades. But then, if that were not enough, Amilcar Cabral. Now, these are all very brilliant leaders, theoreticians, thinkers, and so on. Amilcar is assassinated in 1973. And then the head of Frelimo, the Liberation Front in Mozambique, Samora Machel, he's assassinated. And assassination after assassination and then the assassination of Marion Nguwabe, the same type of thing. And then, and so on, creating a perpetual situation of instability in Africa, and such. So I want, I'm so happy that you all were able to do this. And I'm just so sad that we don't have the energy all the time to have done it. But this is also the 70th anniversary of Bandung. Maybe by the end of the year, we'll be able to do something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just want to say, Doc, that I think this is the first time I really have a sense of how tragic the past 100 years in Africa have been. And, tragic in the sense of this great uprising, but then this brutal putting down.
Yep.
And I mean, we just don't know how brutal and vicious it was. I mean, to really decapitate these struggles, built up with the sacrifice of so many people, and then just to kill off the leadership. And, the other sense I'm getting also is that the South African struggle may have been, the most well-developed of the African struggles, in the sense that they had the time to develop their ideas, develop their organization, but also, I guess, to think about what the future would look like. And in that sense, that eventual betrayal, of the ANC by that compromise. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, what they were trying to achieve was so large, was so grand.
Yeah.
And even, and the thing is, South Africa is really, maybe other than the United States, the only nation where races coexist. So this great human experiment, like the United States, this great human experiment in a new kind of society. But, how it was betrayed. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you, all across Africa. But, that's why at this time, and I think we really have to pay attention to what's happening there, especially with the turn towards China. And, there's so much propaganda about the Chinese investments in Africa. But, I mean, they've been dealing with the West. They've been dealing with them for the last, 200 years. Yeah. And they know what that means. Like. So, I mean, at this point, this opens up space for alternatives. But I guess we have to see where this goes, where it will take us. Yeah.
In the presentations of the exhibit that you guys have done, like what kinds of conversations have come up? Like what are people talking about? As you guys, sorry, I'm kind of far from the I guess as you've been doing these tours with the exhibit, like what kinds of conversations have you guys been having with people? Like what are the things that stick out to people, or like what do people want to talk with you guys about?
Well, I mean, one of the things is that we've been asked to give a lot of tours.
Wow.
There's a lot of interest, which, we've put up a couple of exhibits before, but it hasn't, so, I mean, the reason we got late coming was because we were giving a tour and then, we got caught up in traffic coming back. But and we're going to give one again tomorrow. I think, there's a lot of interest because there is very little people want to know more. People want to know more, and people, there are not enough opportunity, not enough avenues to know about Africa, but also know about this connection between, this foundational connection between the freedom struggles, which define our, which define these nations that emerge from colonialism. And I think, as I said, I mean, it's a lot of younger people, and I think there are several younger people in India who right now don't have a political home. They don't have, there's no ideology that quite represents how they're feeling. And somehow this is very, this is something that they can feel. This is something they can see that the African struggle is like their struggle. They can see that Lumumba is somebody they can look up to. And the other thing is it's just India and Africa and that connection.
Right. Yeah. Actually, the thing is that we're also coming to realize that really, in terms of societal structure, in terms of the basic processes that make up society historically, and especially in the ancient world, I think India is very close to many African societies, many African civilizations, And so a lot of times there are things that people just naturally grasp because they've seen it in their own lives. But the other thing is that the space is it's kind of an old space, but the image of all of these beautiful Black faces, it's not just like reading something. These pictures, Kwame Nkrumah, just his face along with Nehru's face, it evokes something.
Yeah.
It shows you how different people can relate to each other in a revolutionary way, So I think people have been generally moved by it. Honestly, we're surprised by how much people want us to. And like once we start doing tours, people keep coming in. And then we have to keep doing that. Like we just did like 5 different tours of the same exhibit. So yeah, and also I think people are just they're always comparing, like, how come this didn't happen in India? How come the process in the Congo was so cut short, but that didn't happen in India? And it makes them reflect on their own freedom struggle.
Right.
I mean, we had a 90-year process, from 1857 to 1947, that stages of development of the struggle, that scientific process, which they did not have the luxury to go through. Patrice Lumumba did not have the luxury to go through that, but also like the science of revolution. It's not just about getting power, one has to, and in fact, the imperialists sometimes give you power to keep power away from you, It's about how to create a society, how to maintain a society, how to establish new human beings. So yeah, all of these things have come up, but I think we'll have to do more, It's the absence of any knowledge on these struggles is just, it's astounding. People are like, I didn't even know Nehru talked to Africans. I didn't even know that Indians knew Africa, It's, there's a real gap. And it's like everywhere in the world, that counter-revolution in consciousness where the only relationship you see is your relationship to the West, to the white man, and everything else is erased. So, yeah.
Yeah, and something Doc meant, it was the CIA in Lumumba's case.
Yeah.
And I think the evidence now is very clear. Even at that time, I guess, but, all the details now are pretty much known of how the CIA orchestrated this, along with Belgians, with Belgian help. And yeah.
I guess I have a question, because I feel like because we have done stuff celebrating like Pan Africa, especially with like the 10th anniversary for the free school a few years ago, and I guess we have a sense of the ideological headwinds that you would encounter in American society, like Afrocentrism,
I'm thinking about that. Yeah.
like those kinds of things, which I feel like we've become pretty familiar with. I guess for you guys, like, what are the kinds of ideological headwinds that you would encounter? I guess the basic one that you brought up is just like the lack of knowledge, but I think has there been more, I guess, either indirect or direct, like that kind of opposition that you guys have encountered?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting you put it like that, because I think the central question that stands in the way for the struggle for peace in India is the question of China. And, and that's the unity with China is the stumbling block for, there's just so much propaganda on it. So even in our event, when we had the inauguration, we invited somebody to give a lecture on, this is the thing with Indians, because they don't have that inherent white supremacy, they don't, immediately adopt it. So he was moved by the exhibition. He loved it. He said, yeah, these figures, they're so beautiful. And, if they had lived, if there hadn't been these coups and assassinations, it would be a different Africa. He was really, you could see that he was moved. But then in the lecture, he's like, well, we have to really establish our own relationships with Africa because China's in there.
Right.
And, China's going to set up its own system of slavery. And, so we pushed back, and there was a debate, but, it's kind of like that white supremacy, it shows up in different ways. And you assume sometimes that people are either going to be the oppressor or the oppressed. But, the fact that there can be new kinds of relationships between nations is something that, we're working on. But, even with Africa, this, there isn't yet fully a sense that we can relate with Africa on equal terms, like the relationship between a Nehru and a Nkrumah. And partly, that's because I think you don't see that leadership in Africa yet on the world stage in the way that you used to in the Bandung movement. So I think people don't necessarily know who to look at, but there is, this history. And it is a deeper question about human beings. So the fact that Africans are signing trade deals with China, should make you question what they see in China. Rather than thinking that China is tricking them into signing trade deals.
Absolutely. Actually.
But Yeah, I would say that's the main, and you'd be surprised at how much, every day in the newspaper, and I don't know why military generals are given prominence, and, they're talking about how we have to fight tomorrow's war today and blah, 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 It's all dominated by news about China. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And obviously it goes without saying, it is Western intelligence, it is Western forces within our own media. Pretty much within all media, and the intelligentsia, the intelligentsia, which is all Western trained.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel that we really interrupted the conversation on Donnie.
It's it, obviously.
It's kind of we kind of dropped in the middle of it.
We were just waiting for you.
Well, the two things I took away from you guys sharing from the exhibit was, I say this often, but maybe it sounds stupid, but I actually think, like, even that thing of where people are like, oh, I didn't realize that Nehru met with African leaders, or even the fact that India actually sent soldiers to Africa. It also kind of, I think I never realized just how much of a giant India was in the world struggle. And I don't know, I think that for me, it's very moving, because I also think, I don't know, it's just, I feel like, because today people talk a lot about China, but I also think there's something significant about the contribution of India to the world struggle throughout the 20th century. And but the other thing is, sometimes hearing you guys talk also makes me reflect on, sometimes it's easy to forget, even from America, how important it is to find the figures who went out into the world, like the figures who made it a point to say the American revolutionary process is one and the same as what's happening as the African revolutionary struggle, where it's this thing of how important it is to see the relationship between, let's say, King or even Robeson or Du Bois to the world, or even the musicians. Who are the people who went out to the world because they understood that the American democratic demands, the American revolutionary process, is something actually very interconnected, and even to a certain extent has universal meaning to the world. Because I think sometimes I tend to think a lot about America. I always say the American revolutionary process. What's in America? What's the future in America? But there's something very powerful about being able to, I think in some ways it's even clarifying of what is the American revolutionary process, or who have been the figures of revolution in America, by also asking the question of who understood the value of the world peace movement, or who understood the importance or the interlinking of the anti-colonial movements, or what's happening around the world, is the same, in some ways has the same human lesson as what's happening in the US. And that's something I always take away from the way you guys are connect the 100th anniversary of Patrice Lumumba to India, and what it also speaks, how it kind of makes, especially Indians ask the question of their own freedom struggle. I feel like it could do the same for America too.
Yeah, because one of the points that Baldwin makes in that essay that he writes after Lumumba's assassination, which you guys brought up, is that, and he says this in other places too, but it's he's when I was a young boy growing up, our image of Africa was as, basically the white supremacist image of Africa, which was savages, having no history, no civilization. And he was the only Africans we knew were Haile Selassie, for example, the emperor, king of Ethiopia. He was we were, I watched as Selassie would basically beg Western governments for protection or something. And then he's connecting Lumumba's assassination and the protest against it, but connecting it to let's say the student movement in the early 60s. And he's saying the change is that within the span of one generation for Black folk in America, the image of Africa and the image of the world has changed. And it raises a larger question about what propelled even the inception of the Black freedom movement, the civil rights movement, was not even purely things within the American society, but also the world movement and that spirit and that zeitgeist. And because I think this is something that I've been thinking about. It's like, if you were to just look at it from domestically within the US, there are not like clear-cut reasons for why a revolutionary movement should have developed within the United States at that time. Like, you didn't have like an immediate thing like the Great Depression, for example, which would have been a much more obvious reason which would have propelled a movement. But instead, you had a period of relative prosperity within the US after World War II. And so then what explains why the Black freedom movement unfolds in the time that it does? And part of it is like law and chance, like this thing which is not really explained by, you know, structural factors. But to me, like even the way that Baldwin talks about it, it's like these students in Nashville and other parts of the country, they're seeing what's happening on the world stage. They're seeing Africa and Asia rising, and it's creating a sense of like, oh, why aren't we? And you know, Lawson talks about this too. Like, why aren't we doing something? It's been 100 years since emancipation. Why aren't we doing something? Like, have we lost our own kind of impetus and revolutionary impetus for freedom, which comes out of, you know, the Civil War and Reconstruction? And so I think, yeah, it's an interesting question of, yeah, like what Emily raised, like how does the world movement influence the American revolutionary process in a way which is not even purely about structural forces, but is also about the change in world consciousness and how that impacts the consciousness of people in the United States.
And actually that point that you had made already about Donny Hathaway fits well with this, or the point that you said about a cultural, how the American people rebuild themselves and, you know, what an economic revolution, a cultural revolution, whatever. But like Donny Hathaway is universal too. So there is also that question of like what you had brought up, Nandita, if Africans see something in China, you know, what is the, you know, what heightens the possibility of seeing a struggle in America, or like, you know, what ties everything together besides this beautiful music or beautiful music, revolutionary music, but.
Well, actually, and I don't know if it makes sense for me to see the other side of the laptop.
I can hear it.
Cool. I'll just say speaking this time. Actually, I've been pretty emotional also about, and this is a lot of the spotlight. Seeing you, I really want to, if you guys don't mind sharing some of the photos that you, I don't know whether it's like through your Google Drive or maybe even online, that might be a really nice way for people to, like their exhibition may be able to live on, maybe online if that's possible, just to continue sharing this information. And it would be great if it sounds like it can't stay up forever at the Indian Institute of World Cultures, but I feel like I agree, like we really need, like I think we need these images, we need this history, we need to see these shining Black faces and all of these beautiful connections, because funny enough, like my way of coming to learning about Lumumba was actually kind of through art, and actually kind of through the impact that, you know, so many artists and jazz musicians and poets like you know, Baldwin and Lorraine Hansberry like had what they really felt like when they learned of his death, obviously like almost in retrospect, but it really felt like something had been ripped away from them. And like, this is not just African artists who happen to come across, but also, you know, we were saying about like artists across Latin America, but also Afro-America. And then we're learning also about the Soviet Union. But I remember actually one of the interesting things is when I was researching like Archie Shepp, the like saxophonist from Philadelphia. He was going to the 1962 World Youth Festival in Helsinki, Finland. And basically one of the big topics there was actually like, how do we as like young people, probably average age of the person, all these people who are going like from all over the world, like was probably in their like teenage years, were going to like, they were just asking themselves like what it meant to like, yeah, like they felt this question of like, it wasn't just the Lumumba that was like so brutally killed. It was all of our freedom that had been attacked, that have been
yeah, like this was the capacity, I guess, of like the CIA or like what it was that like they were really, like imperialism's really ugly hand. But I appreciate what you said, Tony, about I don't know, that was a little bit unusual for me to call you Tony, but I appreciate what you said about what it meant that like Lumumba was killed.
Yeah.
Like with, it just felt right. Like when Lumumba was killed and the news of it spread around the world, it was not a moment of defeat for people. It felt that people needed to soldier on, and it gave them more strength to have to like move forward without like this beautiful and articulate leader. And I feel like that kind of response is really important. And like I feel like that must have been also what you had come across in your research when people were like Nehru or like Indira was processing what it meant to perhaps that there could have been more done, or perhaps like there could have been a different role that like India or like Asia or other countries could have played. Because I think I'm thinking about how I think Lumumba is remembered in certain like ways today. Like I'm thinking of this really awful film that was made by Raoul Peck, the same guy who made I Am Not Your Negro. And I think it was about Lumumba, but it was like, I think Mary, you're the one that told me about how it felt to watch it. It's very introspective, Freudian in some ways. Like it's about Lumumba, but it's also about the wrong postmodernist lens about pessimism and cynicism, and it's confirming like a negative sense about human nature and like defeat, like a movement, and like a sense of like, you know, a movement, a people's movement, you know, not being completed can be a way into this kind of moment of confusion, or like, you know, I'm not putting in the right words at all, but I think there are ways in which people take the wrong lessons from history, basically. Wrong lessons from tragedy, wrong lessons from the cutting down of like people's movement and a movement for freedom. And like all of the brutality of all of these assassinations is really gruesome to contend with, but it also is not the place to, I don't know, like ossify like all of that, you know, pain and tragedy. And I feel like people do use that to, I guess, confirm certain narratives about Africa's like, you know, maybe Africa is condemned to like dictatorships and corruption because we lost that generation of leaders, and can we ever find new leaders again like that? And it's, I think, easy to, you know, use this history for the wrong reasons, but I think that's why, like, thinking about like the way in which you presented that exhibition and how you're talking about Lumumba and the like Bandung spirit and like what that struggle was really like versus like all the challenges that basically that were present then, but also reflected now, that confront all countries, like, but especially like a country like India, but even ourselves in America, need to actually, disentangle and actually find like the right, or like what this history can actually teach us about our capacity for something greater. I don't know, that makes sense.
Yeah. Can I just say something about I mean, the point you're bringing up about art, I think there is actually in our research we found so much poetry. I mean, just poets all over the world writing poems for Lumumba, and you know, in different regional languages in India. But Langston Hughes also wrote, I think, a series of 4 poems for Lumumba. And they're really beautiful, you know. And you know, I think it's also, I mean, what you're saying, Kathy, that you know, I think sometimes, you know, sometimes human beings, like individual human beings, can represent a certain essence of a civilization.
Right.
And you know, I mean, the way people describe him in optimism, you know, always optimistic that everything could be done. Optimism to a fault, you know, sometimes trusting people too much. But just all of this enthusiasm, and I mean, till the last days, he was smiling, you know. He believed that it could be done. And I mean, that's why the loss was so great, because he was so, he, you know, in his personality, he really imbibed the hopes for his nation and for Africa. So yeah, all of this poetry that comes out of his, you know, after he's assassinated, all of these people who write poems. There's something else I was going to say. I forget. Sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons one of the things that really brings out the tragedy is really seeing his life, the Lumumba the man. And he's somebody who's from a peasant family, and who gets education, but not he's not he's trained by Catholic school and a Protestant school, but then he drops out, and then he becomes a postal service officer, and but in all this, he is getting in. He's reading, he's becoming part of these reading circles. And one of his favorite subjects is philosophy. And he
reads all of the French classics, all of the words, the literature of Europe translated into French. He knows all of it.
And and then he writes a book. I mean, he's also trying to do a sociology of the Congo. He writes a book on the Congo, and he says, "I've talked to every kind of person in the Congo." And he's learning languages. I think he spoke several languages.
Yeah.
And Congo. I mean, it's a really, what Doc was saying at the beginning. I mean, this country is pretty much 3/4 the size of India by landmass.
Whoa.
And you have an estimated 200 ethnicities there. I mean, it's a complex place.
And 700 languages.
Whoa.
Within the Congo.
Yeah, estimated. So, yeah, I mean, it's a complex place, and here he is working that all out, philosophically, sociologically. But he's, he's 35 years, and he's really, participating in the struggle. And then this commitment to Pan-Africa, this commitment to this, along with the Nkrumah, this commitment to this Pan-African struggle, where, and then just the story of, when he's captured and he tries to go to his supporters in Stanleyville, the other thing is his infant daughter had died.
Right.
And so he wants to be there, to see her, because he's been died, so he wants to go to his wife who's there in Stanleyville. And on the way, he's being pursued. But he just, whenever the people want him to speak, he speaks. And some could say that's, foolishness, the why to, take care of yourself better. And maybe, I don't know, but, it's just this beautiful personality, but then this very serious personality. And then just, I mean, I don't know, most people describe him as getting no sleep at all. He's just always working, always trying to, just seeing that shape up, seeing this beautiful person emerge, and then to have it cut down so brutally. That really brings out this, what this was.
Yeah, but just one last thing. In our discussion, this thing came up of the median ages of societies. And, Europe is aging, Japan is aging. I think the median age of India is about 28. India is known as like one of the youngest populations in the world. But the median age all across Africa is actually 18.
Wow.
It's a population of very young people, and a lot of teenagers.
India?
So you talk about the future of humanity. This is why we have to talk about, and we have to talk about people like Patrice Lumumba, like Simone Michel, like Oliver Tambo, because that is what humanity is going to go towards.
Yep.
That is the population that will define the future. But it's so striking, right? 18, the median age.
That's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They're literally a teenage population.
That's awesome. I didn't know.
It's also interesting because from my impressions of things, it seems like the vision of Pan-Africanism has always been slightly more of an actual concrete, achievable political vision compared to Pan-Asia in some ways. I don't know if you guys really agree with that, but it's whether it's Nkrumah whether it's Gaddafi, like there have been like actual, like concrete political projects
Towards unity, yeah.
towards Pan-Africanism.
That's interesting.
And in a way that I think it's not as like direct in that way with Pan. I don't know if you guys believe this, but it's like in part because Asia is a lot bigger, and I don't know, like maybe the civilizational mix that's involved too, but I think one of the things that I got when I think a while ago we've been reading people like Nkrumah and other African leaders was I think in part it's like the possibilities for Pan-Africanism, whether it's like Gaddafi's vision or Nkrumah's vision or others, it's like that project or that kind of historic task is something that, like, whether it's at the direct level of like how do you unite the Congo, but then at the larger level of how do you unite Africa, that is something, like, if that is achieved, that is something which can teach the world, basically. Like, it has, like, there are possibilities, I think, within Africa, like, if that vision is actually achieved, like what you would learn about human beings, what you would learn about like this process of uniting people across this vast continent, and across also, yeah, like these artificial divisions and all that stuff, but also even the like longer historical like tribal stuff. I think it's like that. I guess my intuition, but it's like that experience is something which would have a lot to teach the world, and I think that's part of the kind of untapped potential still of Africa, and specifically this whole Pan-African thing, which again, like to me, feels like something which is like actually very achievable as like an actual like even a political structure within the African continent, which like different people have, I guess, made headway towards, but has been also cut down by the West over these successive generations. But,
Without saying a lot, I agree with you very much. That there's so much to be learned from the study of Africa from a sociological standpoint. And I think you might be right. I never thought about it until you said it, that at least a BRICS type alliance is very possible, doable on the African continent. Yeah.
Well, it's 9:30 for you guys, so maybe we can let you go. Oh, wait, you should stay. And I think we can move on.
No, I think we will go.
Yeah, obviously. I didn't know how to like professionally or politely say you can stay or
Get
go.
Freak out.
But or yeah, maybe we can.
It's 10 o'clock. Yeah.
Oh shit. Maybe we can move on to the next part of our free school discussion. It'll build on the struggle against neocolonialism, but we'll come back to our discussion of deindustrialization, and then we'll actually Doc proposed something interesting, which is I think we'll also discuss China's program.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Chinese state and discuss what China has done in terms of rural industrialization, and then have an open discussion about what is possible in America. And actually, it's a question that I know that everyone, but in India, I know that you guys also ask about India. So I'll turn it over back to Doc to come back to the conversation of deindustrialization.
And I don't know that I'm going to do everything that you said.
Oh, okay.
Why not?
Because I'm not qualified.
No, Jeremiah will help with the deindustrialization.
Well, yes. This is continuing what we started last week, and perhaps a part of the Oh, y'all leaving?
Yeah, we'll listen on YouTube. Doc.
Okay, all right. Take care. It's good to see you all.
Good to
Bye-bye.
That's an expectation.
The topic that we started last week might be a central part of what the free school does going forward. And certainly the way I'm thinking about the event at the Lucian Blackwell Library is a part of this study of deindustrialization and poverty. And as we said before, we could almost trace the deindustrialization of the United States as a policy. It was not haphazard. It was a decided upon policy to ship manufacturing and its jobs out of the United States. That meant in industries like auto production, garment production, steel production, electronics production, even some service industries, a complete and total deindustrialization of the United States. It became the new normal. So in a lot of ways, you guys know nothing but it and the policies of the ruling elite that flow from it, including mass incarceration, including the militarization of police, and the infiltration of communities with drugs and opiates, and all of this to pacify a population that they knew would rebel against these policies. I should add, a part of this was buying off of labor leaders who then went along with it under the name of supporting the lesser of two evils in presidential and other elections, and the total annihilation of the Black leadership by imprisoning, killing, and just generally driving mad or into depression freedom fighters. What you see today that call themselves Black leaders could never have led a group of Boy Scouts around the corner back in the days. They're the worst of the worst, the most cowardice of all of us. But it was designed to break the American working class. They said it over and over and over again, and not in the 1990s, in the 1970s and 80s, that the American working class must be put in a position to compete with low-wage workers in other parts of the country. Other parts of the world. China, in particular, but also nations in Central America, El Salvador, and others, Guatemala, and on the African continent. But China, because of the discipline of its working class, the education of its working class, was more apt for this. Now, as they move industry from China, because the wages in China are not low enough, they're going to places like India, Vietnam, and such. It is a spectacle to have watched a proud, highly educated, highly organized working class disintegrate right before your very eyes. And as I've tried to tell stories about when I was a kid, sitting on my steps, watching people, in this case, mainly Black working people, coming home from work. And I mean, just to see their pride, the way they walked, the way as they came home, they spoke to the kids, they spoke to people, the elderly, all of that type of thing. Their manners, their mannerisms, as compared to today, and we will go in order to see this in real time, young men who woke up at 12 o'clock and stand on the corner all day, perhaps selling drugs or preparing to do something that is harmful to the community. What you see when you go to Butler, Pennsylvania, or what was the other city that you worked at, Emily, in Western Pennsylvania?
Washington.
Washington, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Certainly, here I'm talking about the white working class who thought it could never happen to them. That every generation would do better than the one that came before it. That we were all moving out of the working class into the middle class. And that if Black people hadn't made it, it was because they were lazy, not so intelligent, or had other cultural pathologies. Today they know better. However, deindustrialization took place on the doorstep of what they call the Third American Revolution. Pardon me, let me get my words. The Third Industrial Revolution, which was information technology. Now, I don't go necessarily with this chronology and the breaking down of periods of industrial revolutions, but for the sake of discussion and perhaps argument, let's use their approach. The first industrial revolution being 1776, up to perhaps the beginning of the 20th century, when we went to mass production like Ford cars and the Ford system, what they call Fordism, the assembly line production, where thousands of workers in factories would produce an entire car. It was not, well, you get the fender from one part of the world and the engine from another, the catalytic, I don't know anything about cars, from another part of the world. Everything was done at a huge factory complex in Detroit. Steel was produced in huge factories in places like Pittsburgh and Cleveland. It was all done in a almost intact system. And that's what they call Fordism, named after Henry Ford and the assembly line production. But that system was replaced, and this is not a normal or natural process. This is based upon decisions made by human beings. When they go to what they call the Third Industrial Revolution, which was information technology. Now, I don't know how different, or why there had to be a difference between the industrial and the information industrial revolution, but they made that difference. Well, it was kind of because they were shipping all the manufacturing and industrial jobs out of the country, well, they would celebrate this, something not to be celebrated, as a third industrial revolution. We're becoming an information society. In other words, the society in the cities would be cleaner, everybody would work in an office or at a keyboard. If not that, you can get a job as a security guard. You know, that things would be cheaper coming from countries where the cost of labor was cheaper. They didn't mention, and that the rate of profit was higher for the corporations, you know, but they're going to celebrate this. But the real deal was the breaking of the working class. And I cannot emphasize enough In spite of all of the weaknesses, the American working class was admired throughout the world, especially in those countries like China and countries that were trying to get, and India, get on a fast path to industrialization. This was huge. Again, I'll take you guys around some places. I know we have seen it very clearly, and I could describe it quite well when we go down to the Navy Yard, the shipbuilding yard. And you just see the way the buildings and the shops and the dry docks, the complex organization that was, and the pride that people had in working in the Navy Yard. I mean, I would hear it. Oh, so and so, and it was doubly difficult for a Black person to get a job in these places. So if a Black person got a job, it was almost like celebrating Easter. So and so got a job at the Navy Yard. Oh my God. It was just like today we would celebrate somebody getting a PhD, but that was a highly organized place. But it was organized not from the managers, but the workers organized it. What they call Fordism is a tribute to the American working class. I know myself, having worked on the waterfront, that we didn't need no person work for the company to tell us what to do, and in fact, if they came on the ship, they might, get an ass whooping. People didn't play that. We got this. I'm serious. And we were organized there because it's a different system of labor into what we call work gangs. And such. But nonetheless, the workers organized it. I know in the factory where my aunts and my mother and them worked, the women organized that shop. And without the workers, I don't care how many brilliant managers that graduated from MIT or Drexel, wherever they graduate from, they knew nothing, were treated as literal low IQ people by the workers, And so the industrial system in the United States, in many ways, in most ways, in most significant ways, was organized from the bottom up, not from the top down. You know what I'm saying? And that's why unions became so important, not only when it came to fighting for a contract, but in the management of the day-to-day implementation of a contract, like work rules, what I can do and what I'm not supposed to do, and how the work I do should not be confused with what somebody else does. It was a system that could only be organized by the working class. And if you take people like Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, Lenin, and Stalin, they studied the American working class. And as opposed to the postmodernist, hardcore leftists and all that nonsense, who looked down upon the American working class, revolutionaries around the world looked up to the American working class. That is not to say that the American working class was pure and had reached the promised land, by no stretch of the imagination. If that were the case, I believe the American working class could have fought better deindustrialization. It was racism. It was the idea of dog eat dog at a certain level. You know what I'm saying? I know the Black workers in the US steel plants back in the 70s had to take the union and the company to court for discrimination. they would cooperate in discriminating to keep black workers, as they would say, at the lowest, heaviest, hardest, most dangerous jobs. You know, in a steel plant, in the foundry. You be in the foundry for 40 years. White person coming in the foundry for 5 years, and then they're moving up. You see, and all of that took place. UPS, the same thing, etc. The working class is different today from that point of view. But it's because all workers have been degraded and are now either in or on the verge of poverty. So you can't appeal to a wage for whiteness. I'm white. My cousin worked here. You know, all of that corruption which they would use. And the union often didn't fight against it. And that's why a strong fight always in unions, who are going to be the shop stewards? You see what I'm saying? Who is going to be the leadership at the grassroots, day-to-day level of the working class in the plant? If you get a racist, it's going to be one thing.
Right.
If you get a black worker, it's going to be something else generally. And so those fights took place even in the most militant unions. And then we could then talk about militant trade unionism as opposed to bullshit trade unionism or sellout trade unionism. And there was a difference. For example, the United Automobile Workers Union and the Ruther brothers were always associated with a more liberal, more progressive, more radical, more militant trade unionism. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, I'll just give you an example. That's when almost all the cars produced in the world, 75% of them were produced in the United States. That meant that Detroit never slept. You know, there was a shift from 7 or 8 to 4:30 or 5. Then there was another shift. And Three shifts. That's right. The factory was always working because the United States was the center of car production. You know what I'm saying? And the UAW was a proud union. And whenever the contract came up, and they were not afraid to go out on strike. I mean, wasn't no thing of like the last minute, like we saw with District Council 33. Didn't nobody know what was happening? Well, we might go out on a strike. I don't, you know, nobody knew because the union leadership is incompetent. The UAW, they would say like this, okay, we want a contract across the industry, Ford, Chrysler, GM, right? The big three. We want a contract for everybody. But when we go out on strike, we're going out against one. The other people continue to work and pay into the strike fund, which would help the other, you know, the workers out on strike. And so they were able to outlast the companies. And then because of a positive profile in the community, everybody looked up to the UAW, especially as the workforce became more black. And the black community of Detroit rallied around the UAW. You know what I'm saying? This was something you guys have never seen. It was something that most of us took for granted. I always thought, as I was a little boy, as I grew up, that I would always see Clayton coming home at 5 o'clock, that I would always see Miss Ruth and Aunt Blanche and my mother walking home. You know what I'm saying? I thought it couldn't be any other way. It's just like, you know, a law of nature, that there's a working class, that they're in unions, that they fight. You know what I'm saying? That this upward trajectory, and suddenly, And this is this ruling class. If there's ever any kind of sense that you can trust, like, oh, we can't negotiate with Trump, you can't negotiate with none of them. Maybe they were better one time. But this, no, like there's a saying in the street, word is bond.
Right.
My word is my bond.
Right.
In other words, I don't have to write nothing down. I don't have to bring no lawyer in. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Word, that's what they say. Word is bond. Now, what exactly it means? But it means that you keep your word. Your word is everything. If I tell you something, you can take it to the bank, as they would say.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this idea that the ruling class totally and utterly reneged on every agreement it had made with the working class, the social contract, which was not written, we had labor contract, but the general social contract. You all reneged on it and sent the jobs. First, the auto plants, they went to Japan. That's when you had the Japanese automakers. And they were not American, but they were American financed production. So that's when you got Toyota and Subaru and Honda coming into the country. And then such a furor that these Japanese corporations began to do production in the United States. But then they went to the South, the least labor organized part of the country. That's how ruthless and dirty they are. Oh yeah, we'll bring jobs. Well, what kind of job? What protection on the job? Don't tell me about a job.
Right. Right.
You know, I had a job under slavery. You ain't doing me no favor. Shit. I mean, all that job thing. What are the wages? What are the protections? Do I work till I die, or do I have a pension, or whatever? Is there a social contract between labor and capital to maintain a level of social stability and social peace? Or do you guys go all out for yourselves and your class? You know what I'm saying? And those that serve you. Or do you have a sense of a social good? Well, what they can't understand, at least, and I'll tell you a little bit about what some of these people say. What they don't understand about China is there's a social contract. You know, every worker will have health care and health insurance. Everybody, 90% of the Chinese people live in houses built in the last 40 years. Yeah, they got a housing crisis. Well, that's a crisis, a bump along the way to housing 1.25 billion people. Come on, man. Y'all can't house 10 people. You know what I'm saying? And then to lift 800 million people out of historic poverty, a social contract on the Communist Party of China. And these cats like Steve Bannon, they're nothing but a joke at their best. You know, the Chinese communists. But what you know about them? It's just like you're going to stereotype me. You know, an N-word from the hood. That's all y'all got to know, right? Label me. So they're going to be the Communist Party, the Chinese. No, it's not the Communist Party. That's the correctness. They're going to trivialize it. The Chinese Communist Party. Like they said, we're not the Communist Party of all the Chinese. You got Chinese all over the world. We don't deal with them like that. We are the Communist Party of China, which includes Taiwan, by the way. You know, so they just keep it 100. And there is a social contract. And every 5 years, the Communist Party renews that contract in the 5-year plan. And you know, it's just, now, okay. I think the crisis of the United States is the greatest crisis in the history of this country. The American working class is at the lowest level in its modern history, its last 80-year history. I don't care what they say about employment is up 180,000 jobs. I always say, what kind of jobs? If I'm working 3 jobs, you have not done me a favor. Pay me or play me, man. Get down or lay down, something like that. But you just can't continue this fraud. Oh, inflation is down. It need to be down from what it was. $7 a dozen for eggs. All right, it's down to $5.50. Oh, I'm happy. You understand? It's a nickel and dime espionage thing. Yeah, it's just like I'm giving you a job. You giving me a job. I don't have a human right to a job. Oh, I'm giving me health care. All these taxes I'm paying. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So, okay. I say all of that. I know Emily wants me to go on the road in a comedic act or something like that to raise money for free school.
No, yeah, fundraising. Grassroots fundraising.
But I say all of that to say deindustrialization plus the cost of empire are maybe the 2 pillars of this crisis in what we would call a macro sense. It makes the entire social system unsustainable. I would repeat, empire, which means wars, preparation for wars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and deindustrialization, has brought the nation to a point of irreversible crisis, a crisis which cannot be resolved on the terms of the system as such. In other words, I'll just mention some names, and all of them are negative and pessimistic about the future of the United States. The ruling class itself is in a state of deep pessimism about whether they can rule or whether there'll be anything left to rule in this country. Will the nation be taken, will the government, I should say, be taken down by this $37 trillion of debt? This is unprecedented in human history. The interest rate is larger than the military budget. It is unsustainable, and many nations of the world are withdrawing from the dollar and the treasury notes that they hold based upon the money that they have lent to the United States. In spite of what they say, the United States has one of structurally the most unsustainable economies in the world. One could probably say many of the European countries, they're not as bad off as the United States because they did not shoulder the entire burden of empire, which was the military budgets, and all that goes along with that. The cost of empire was never shouldered by the European countries, and therefore they were able to provide health care, better education, a better quality of life. This is the meaning of Trump saying, now y'all gonna have to help to pay off some of this. We cannot afford empire. Now, Trump, once you say Trump, you're not talking about a stable human being. You're talking about a person that has knowledge of certain things, but is ignorant about the interconnectedness of things. And he's reduced himself to a joke now, especially with this Epstein thing.
Yo, dude,
and they say
crazy.
they got photos of him with, bare-breasted young women sitting on his lap and stains from having, ejaculated in his pants. Excuse me for bringing that up.
That's what
It's
I've seen.
it's a very ugly story. And he's in the middle of it. And as soon as they caught him wrong, no, ain't no files.
None.
No files whatsoever. And I just told y'all that to get elected. The hometown, you up Schitt's Creek without a paddle now. All that old big.
He knows the reason why they don't bring it is because they're all in it.
Yeah, they're all in it, but he in it.
Yeah, but he doesn't care.
No, but see, he's the cat that said, I'm going to reveal all of this when I get in, because I'm going to show that the ruling class are pedophiles and corrupt and, child molesters and all that type of thing. And turn out that you in it. And turn out that you found your wife being involved with Epstein.
It's crazy.
She was brought over here as not a child bride, but like Melania said, I'm proud of my nude photos. Even if they was, she said that. That's
You lost that wedding now.
I get to stop that. I'm just saying, the man talking all that big Willie talk, he going to put tariffs on anybody that open their mouth wrong, and I'm mad at Putin. I told him that, and I'm down with Netanyahu, and we're going to, and I'm negotiating with Iran, but now I'm a secretly support Israel, attacking them. I mean, come on, dog. Now you caught up. Or like they say in the street, well, go around, come around. Since you so big and bad, handle this. Let me see if you can handle this crisis. Because this is really existential. It's all up in your house now.
Yeah.
We're in your house. Yeah. And you sit up, but all I'm saying is this. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. You ain't been right for a long time. And people were prepared to say, look, we know you ain't right. We know, but we will use you against the big people that we know ain't right. Then as soon as he get in there, he go with the people he said that he was against. People say, well, you shouldn't have believed him. No way. Well, why should I believe Biden? I mean, in other words, you see the point that I'm at. Nonetheless, I'm back. I want to get back to my point. Trump's idea of reindustrializing the United States will never work in 1,000 years. Where he's going to make this literally a tax-free haven for corporations, a union-free environment, and I'm going to reindustrialize the United States by taking us back to what we did in the 1880s, going up to the 1914. In other words, bringing a lot of people. Let me keep it. I don't know what that man is talking about. But one thing, it will not work. That type of supply side economics will not work, especially in this world environment. You will not tackle the federal debt, the sovereign debt as they call it, without a retreat, full-blooded retreat from empire. You cannot reindustrialize this country overnight. I believe it will take 2.5 generations at least, because it is not a technological matter or a matter of bringing factories here. It is a matter of rebuilding the working class, which you all destroyed. It is, and this is Du Bois coming and going, it is a human problem. It is the problem of labor. Now, labor can cooperate if there is a social contract between themselves and capital. That was what most working people wanted. That's what they saw in embryo in the New Deal. That capital compromise for the best interest of all sides. Today it is different. Finance capital, industrial capital has raped the nation and destroyed the working class. Now they come before us, writing in the New York Times and wherever else they can write, and speaking on podcasts, crying crocodile tears of what do we do. Most of them that I read, including Adam Tooze, Peter Thiel, David Brooks, and others, recognize, if not totally, that this is not just a question of attracting capital back into the country. This is a civilizational crisis. And this is the meaning of this problem. They destroyed the working class and now want the working class to assist them in rebuilding a system that they can benefit from. And the working class is distrustful at best.
They say they don't
But
need it.
they recognize it as a civilization crisis. Now, what that means to them is a little bit different, very different from what it means for us. We talked about Peter Thiel, that the nation after the moon shot in 1969 and Woodstock and the rise of hippieism, as he sees it, our civilization became stagnant. This is Ross Douthat. He used the word stagnation. Thiel uses the word, I forget which word he uses, but something along the lines of stagnation. The civilization stagnated, okay? And the way out of it for Thiel is a new scientific discovery, a new technology, a new biomedical or quantum computing achievement. Thiel admits now that AI ain't gonna be enough, which was supposed to save Western civilization. Well, that ain't enough. There has to be more. But what that more is, he don't know. Adam Tooze, and I got this from Jeremiah in a podcast, was talking about his almost month-long trip to China. And the thing that was interesting to me, kind of amazing to me, that he was so ignorant of China. Oh, in this medium-sized town, which is now a center of electric vehicle production, they have a subway system. I thought you was a heavyweight. You didn't know that? I ain't even been to China. All you got to do is get some YouTubes. You can see it all the time. Oh, China is rising so fast. But this is what is interesting in his life. And Jerry can fill it in a little bit more. When he talked about modernity, then I'm saying, oh, now you in the free school's house.
Yeah.
This is our house, dog. I mean, come on in. Let's see how you can handle your business. See, when they start talking like that, I get happy. Rather, like these old ignorant so-called leftists, marching and talking shit. You can't talk. But see, when you get a cat like Adam Tooze, when he come in the house, he gonna try to, debate, go through the syllogism of the satisfied. But he said Chinese modernity, which is our idea of colored or Afro-Asiatic modernity, New World movement of thought, which made me want to say that too. Jack, you just got caught up in the New World movement of thought. You tried to stay with the old world movement of thought. It wasn't happening no more. But he was astounded. But he was not as pessimistic about history as David Brooks is. He says, look, China is where the future rests. Chinese modernity is modernity at this stage. I don't know whether he said it like this, but he implied that, number one, he's trying to learn Mandarin, which is a beautiful thing. But what he said is, and this is interesting, and Al, you have to help me through this. I mean, he said to learn Chinese is to reconfigure the neural structure of the brain. Now, so I'm immediately, because I'm in free school, I'm around Chinese that speak both languages on the regular. You know what I'm saying? And I said, they don't act like their brains have been scattered or neurological system. You know what I'm saying? It all, but by the way, I was going to say to him, to choose, maybe you need to check in with Noam Chomsky on language, because, or the foundations of all language, you know, it is not, they are not that separate.
Right.
Robeson never saw it like that. But what he was saying, what I got from two, is that I am so white and so Western
Yeah, I had to. Yeah.
that to go into something this radically different than the West, than the white world, requires an intellectual reconfiguration of who I think I am. The problem is not Mandarin. The problem is you, homeboy, and your inherent white supremacist approach to a nation that you cannot apply it to because it has surpassed you in every major area of knowledge. You understand what I'm saying? And just a small thing. You know, this I get from what Nanditha said. Said the problem for Indians understanding the world is this anti-China thing. So now y'all have locked your brains into something that is white and Western, assume white and Western assumptions that we have to hold China down. Have you ever thought, Modi or Jay Shankar, that holding China down, you holding your damn self down? You know, I mean, it's just so, but my point, and excuse me if I'm sorry, the thing is, when Tu said to learn Chinese is to reconfigure the brain, is my taking it to mean to rethink the world in ways that I never thought possible. And Tu says what Jeffrey Sachs has said, what many others have said, that China has achieved in 40 years what it took the West almost 400 years to do. Even though they had chattel slavery and colonialism and stole from everybody and lied and cheated on the regular, you know, even though all of that, it took them all this time to do what China did in 4 or 5 years. Now, anybody got a problem with that? You know, if the Indians feel, well, you know, we feel a certain way about China because we have elections and they don't. You see what I'm saying? Come on. I mean, is that all you got to say? I mean, you know, sometimes you got to give credit where credit is due. What they did, according to the white man, who y'all accept his opinion before anybody else's, let's be real. Same thing with the Black Misleadership Club. The white man said, oh, it must be true. I say it, oh, you don't know what you took. Well, why? You know what I'm saying? But that's the, you know, psychology of oppression. But anyway, white Westerners who want to see a future for themselves see the pathway to their future through China. Now, I know, and I just say this parenthetic, you know, I understand Alice's critique, you know, and I understand man must know man. But it's a beautiful, and you're right. And it's not a completed process, you know, in China. but it is something never before seen. This has to be acknowledged. There's an essay in the New York Times by a cat named David Autor and Gordon Hanson. And really what it is, it's worth reading. It's a critique of the Trump policy of tariffs. And what they say is that Trump is looking back to a previous period of industrialism and modernity, and not to the new industries of the future, what they call the fourth industrial revolution, sometimes associated with AI and robotics, but I think far more than that. And I want to come back to this. All of them kind of default to technological determinism. If we allow China to surpass us in technology and in the new sciences, we are done. That's their thinking. If China surpasses us like DeepSeek did with AI, oh my God, oh shit. And they did it for 1/10 of what it costs us and all that. You remember how they went into meltdown and a lot of people, went back on the pipe. They were in recovery. They went back on the pipe and started shooting heroin again because they thought that they had achieved supremacy in the technology, which would have made the white man God, and said to the rest of us, bow down. You know what I'm saying? We got you. Now you try to come at us militarily, we got AI in that regard. You try to come at us, AI going to do everything that we want to do to the rest. See, AI became their God. Then China caught up with them and damn near done surpassed them. So what they saying? Well, I don't know. That God failed us too. That's the fifth white God that failed us. But at any rate, you see what I'm saying? And then when they talk about biotechnology, it's interesting that they did not pursue the crazy thing of string theory. This was very interesting that their science and technology was linked to the social relationships of society and not just to economic relationships. It is a way in their mind, and they have polls that show that most Americans are skeptical about AI. Most Chinese and Indonesians and Thai people are positive about it. And what China sees, what the Chinese people see, is this technology is part of, can be used to fulfill the social contract. You know what I'm saying? It means we don't have to work as hard or as long. We put in the time, we made the sacrifice. Deng Xiaoping said, this is how we're gonna roll. We followed that leadership. You understand? And yada, yada, the rest is history. But my point is, what the West sees as an instrument of domination, the Chinese, and these are the two poles. It's not India and China. It's not Japan and the West. No, it's China and the West. These are the poles. If you want to call it a new Cold War, then that's, I guess we can call it that. But in this struggle, China has now shown that it will surpass the United States. Trump's idea is so foolish that only he could put it forward. Only a foolish man, and maybe a desperate man, could put that forward. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to achieve anything at all, and so on. Now, David Brooks, however, while bemoaning the fact in the day's New York Times that the West and the United States is losing to China, all the momentum in technology is on the side of China, but they emphasize technology. But then, in a moment of clarity, in the same article, he says, and I want to quote, but the primary contest is psychological, almost spiritual, end quote. Well, he's saying kind of what we're saying, that it is not about technology, it's about the human being. All the best technology cannot be a substitute for human beings who feel that they live in a society and a government that cares about them. This army of young Black men on a death march says everything that needs to be known about this society and about this so-called fourth industrial revolution. The American population, half of them live either in poverty or close to poverty, irrespective of race, creed, color. Every working person knows that the armies of poor people coming from Central and South America across the borders of the United States is encouraged as a way of bringing the wage level of workers down. We will replace these young Black men, especially, with a Guatemalan worker, a Salvadorian worker, who has no citizenship and therefore no rights, but can only work at whatever wage he's given or she's given. This in itself has caused great anger, unprecedented anger by working people. You go to Chicago, they are saying, this is why the mayor, the Black mayor, so-called social democrat, so-called progressive, so-called everything, his polling numbers are below 20% favorability. Why? Because he want to turn the city into a sanctuary city. Ain't nobody against the immigrants, ain't nobody against the poor. But don't make me more poor to help other poor people. What the hell was the fight for civil rights about? If I can't get a job, if I'm a second-class citizen in a new way now. This is very important to the spirit of the working people. On top of it, the only gods that seem to have any meaning in this time are the Black gods of the Black proletariat, which, as we asked Minister Ishmael, would there be a third resurrection? The first day, no, prophecy said only one. The second day, yes, there must be a third resurrection. But if there's a third resurrection, it will be the gods of the Black proletariat. All of the white gods have either died on their own or been killed. After World War II, after 2 world wars and a Great Depression, existential philosophers and writers declared God is dead. And he probably was. I want to just go quickly. Deindustrialization plus the cost of empire are probably what in this macro sense explains the crisis. You can't explain all of this by just deindustrialization. It explains a lot, but not everything. But the cost of empire. They had to sacrifice the American working class to the imperative of the US empire. That's the way I would like to think about it. Indeed, the profit motive is always there. Cheap labor is always there. But to maintain a global system, a global, labor process, whereby the American worker loses everything they fought for over the centuries, lost it in this competition, I put competition, set up by the corporate elites between American workers and workers in El Salvador, China, now India and other places. The American working class couldn't win. The American working class had achieved too much. To make that world system of labor work, the multinational corporations and banks would have had to compromise, would have had to give up something, and they weren't going to do it. It was zero sum, all or nothing, our way or the highway. And the working class didn't know how to fight. They did. Perhaps the working class had become too comfortable. The fighting core of the working class, which is the Black proletariat, had been marginalized. You know, and I know this a bit by talking to Henry Nicholas and other Black labor leaders who would say, you know, in terms I won't use, how much I didn't like these white labor leaders. And nothing but a bunch of racists, you know, they would say. And Nicholas and them felt because the majority of people in certain industries were white, and the history of white leadership in certain unions and stuff, it was very difficult for Black labor to make its voice heard and how to fight, you know? And of course, all the big industrial unions were led by white men. As I've said before, in this universe of ideas and proposals for the future, most of the major thinkers are pessimistic. If you don't mind, I would just like to read something that I wrote. And the reason I want to read it is because I don't quite agree with it now where I would have agreed with it when I wrote it. But I find it, I reposted it, and I saw a lot of people liked it, and I don't know why. You know, they found it so. But, and here I want to say, I was attempting to provide an economic solution to what, at the time, I didn't fully understand is a deeper and civilizational problem. And I'll tell you, let me just read it. It's plain. Capitalism as a socioeconomic system cannot, and the people shouldn't tolerate it and its injustice for another 25 years. I gave it 25 years. This was in 2012. I was optimistic. It is simply a threat to human survival and the survival of the planet. Billions of people throughout the world realize this. They see capitalism as an evil, anti-human, unjust system. But to merely acknowledge the obvious does not tell us how we get to the next stage of human development, which from an economic standpoint is socialism. We won't go from finance capitalism to socialism. will have to go through transitions. Now, my assertion about the forms of transition from capitalism to socialism assumes the least violent path. I do, however, think the basic framework I'm suggesting would apply even in getting to socialism if we have to confront extreme repression, violence, and even fascism as the bankers and billionaire class and their flunkies fight to hold out. The first stage, this is one which I'll hear, because I think this is kind of my thinking was kind of like Deng Xiaoping after the Cultural Revolution. The first stage that I call the Reconstruction stage would be the stage of state capitalism, where the commanding heights of the economy, essentially the largest banks and financial institutions, are taken over and run democratically for the well-being of the people, and reconstructing society after the extreme damage done by the rule of finance capital. Large industrial corporations like GM and GE that might not immediately be nationalized would be heavily regulated in terms of wages, work conditions, benefit of workers, executive pay, and so on. Small businesses would be supported with low interest loans and other incentives. In this period, we'd move to the universal health care, a living wage, livable unemployment benefits for as long as a person is without work, etc. Food prices would be heavily regulated. Water would be free, and utilities such as gas and electricity would be nationalized and prices severely reduced. This will be a difficult period. Stage 2 is the stage I call state socialism, where the principles of organization of economic life would move directly to socialist principles. I'll explain that. Stage 2 is a stage I call state socialist reconstruction. Here, the power of the people over all levers of social and economic life are consolidated. Production is consolidated on a collective basis. This is the stage of the full implementation of the green economy. Weapons production will be almost totally eliminated. The third stage I call from advanced socialism to communist society. This stage is what Martin Luther King Jr. called the beloved community, a new human being socialized in collectivist and human solidarity. Morality and behavior emerges and will guide social life. Politics will end and will be replaced with ethics. Economic production will be completely to meet the planet's human and environmental needs. Okay. Now, I think that makes sense if you assume that this is essentially an economic crisis, and an economic crisis that will be resolved through economic restructure. That was the Deng Xiaoping and to a certain extent Xi Jinping policy up to this day. And China has perfected the organization of its economy, a mixed economy, state and private market, what they call market socialism. However, the real problems of this society and of humanity are at the level of civilization. In one sense, it is man must know man. Man must know man to know himself. That is a great problem of social science. What is man as such? But, and this is the question that I don't have the answer to, and Emily asked me, would you write this article like this today? I said, no, I wouldn't. I mean, I knew almost immediately. She asked me, I said, I don't even have to think about no. I don't think this is a Du Boisian article. I think it would fit more with Marxism or social democracy. It would. You could hear this logic coming out of like a guy like Donny easily. But the deeper crisis, as admitted by Thiel and Brooks and these people, is the crisis of the West, the crisis of a civilization which cannot grow because of how it identifies itself as white. Can't go anywhere. So how that problem is resolved as we move to create the conditions for a different economic structure. And here I agree completely. You know, we might have the best intentions. We will move to restructure the economy. We'll move to a state capitalist kind of a New Deal where workers have rights and social benefits and the welfare state or X, Y, and Z. Will we reduce military spending? But yada, yada, yada. But we proceed from the same civilizational values. They do not fit this country. In particular, and this is why I hope on the 5th, what do we mean by Black gods? Why do they still live and white gods don't? And the question then is resolved to a question of civilization, a question of art, to move, to restructure the economy, and even to a socialist economy. There must be a civilizational reconstitution of the nation where whiteness is eliminated as an identity, as an assumption about what is civilized. And we as a nation move to become part of humanity. And in so doing, we not only take, but we give more than we take.
Right.
We cooperate.
Right.
And in so doing, we change. And as we change, we can bring about change. At this point, the American people cannot change their society because they have not yet made a choice to change themselves. This is particularly the case with white America. Last point. This debacle with Trump and the MAGA movement. Well, we don't know what to do. No, you want to be white too bad. Get that up, and now you know what to do. But as long as you proceed from that and keep talking about the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, and you can't change your. So that's what I end there.
Let's say something about China and what you said about Trump and the Western crisis. After 2008, when the financial crisis happened, college enrollment of students in America went down, and enrollment of international students went up because it was more profitable for colleges who were in a crisis. That crisis is exacerbated after COVID, especially after international students saw that you might travel to the US and something might happen that you might have to run back and it's not convenient. And that crisis is exacerbated even further in today's time. But I think that there is a connection to the economic crisis, especially after 2008, because I graduated in 2009, and people were going to college not knowing if they would get a job after graduating, not knowing if a job would be available to them. And then I guess Shantanu and I were watching a financial documentary that I enjoy called The Princes of Yen. And it's about the financial crisis in Japan in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And
a lot of, Doc, what you were talking about, the quote, the management, it didn't used to be that way. But in the 70s and in the 80s, people saw that the GDP of Japan specifically was astronomical, and they wanted to mimic this. And so they brought all sorts of management strategies from Japan, because, the question was, how does this tiny island outproduce the United States in GDP when the United States has all this land for factories and all this population. And so all these things like lean, just in time, Kanban, they came from Toyota, they came to America. And that was part of the MBA neoliberalization of the economy. And I think today what you were talking about with the fourth industrial revolution, these MBA types are trying to reinvent the economy into something of a service economy rather than a production economy. So this is also taps into Megna's work about how workers are being replaced, especially in the cities, replaced with knowledge workers, with degrees, with remote jobs. And cities are no longer for the working class. They're no longer for factories. They're for knowledge workers. But in other countries, I was talking to a friend of mine who's from Iran and was very pessimistic talking about Israel. Israel is, I can't believe I'm connecting all these. Israel is a military conscription country. So everybody who is 18 goes into the military, and they take their most intelligent knowledge workers and they put them in a unit. I think it's called Unit 8200. And Unit 8200 becomes very influential in Silicon Valley because all the best computer science people, they get boot trained like someone would be in a military to fly a helicopter or to operate a tank. They learn how to operate a computer and operate networks. Israel is stuck in this service economy mode, whereas Iran is part of the darker world. It's more similar to Africa. It's more similar to India, where the population of Iran is mostly under 18. Iran still has factories to produce missiles, and so I told my friend from Iran, and he felt more confident about Iran's situation, that things weren't just going to collapse because there is this future. They haven't tied their hips to the Western world. To go back to Epstein, a lot of people, especially in the IT world, they like to, I need to find the appropriate word, they like to praise the Israeli Mossad. But, we know because of Epstein's connections to the Dalton School and Robert Maxwell that, Epstein was probably a Mossad agent. And, it's just unacceptable for foreign intelligence agencies to be trafficking children, in the United States. And, I don't know if Trump is in the Epstein files, because I don't think we'll ever know, but, there needs to be someone who comes along and stands up to this foreign policy, consensus. And maybe there was, one final thing is, in 2020, the Winklevoss twins, they published this essay called "The Case for the 500K Bitcoin," and in that paper they talk about how there are more adult diapers sold in Japan than there are children's diapers. There's similar problems like this in the neoliberal economies, and I think the tech oligarchs, are concerned about what happens, when you do pursue these neoliberal policies, you basically encounter the death of a society. We see that in Philadelphia. There's nowhere for children to go, and so they start going to these car meetups in Philly. But where they get to violence, but where are they supposed to go?
Tony, you can go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I have a problem with the way that it was presented about your comment about sanctuary cities, and
Yeah.
because it sounds too much like the white racist workers in my union talking about immigrant workers or undocumented workers. It sounds exactly the same.
Well,
And it's
let me say this. You know, sometimes even a broken clock is right twice a day.
meaning
But, well, meaning that you cannot bring literally millions of undocumented workers in.
who's bringing them in?
The government and the oh yes.
I mean, we know that it's empire that destroyed Central America, and that's
Yes,
why they've got to come
yes,
here. So
yes.
it's the same empire that destroys the inner cities.
But let me ask you
So,
this.
yeah.
But so,
Yeah.
so in other words, let's say this. Take the inner city, like I talked about, an army of unemployed young men who on a death march.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? The jobs at that lower level.
It's not the immigrants that are creating those situations for young black men.
No, but it is exacerbated by those who say we want to bring in immigrant cheap labor to push out even the lowest wage workers.
I don't agree.
Well, can I ask you this?
Yeah.
When millions of workers are invited to cross the border of the
They're
United
not invited. They're killed every day, and they're trafficked every day. And look at the masked agents now with no ID. Look what they're doing to them. If they were welcome, that wouldn't be happening right now.
Well,
I just see it as playing working class against working class to say we don't need sanctuary cities. And look, these people are the ones that are devaluing these people. That's not how. That's what it sounds like, because
but it's not. But what it sounds like. Let me say this.
Yeah.
Sometimes things don't sound like we want them to sound. But I can tell you, I can take you to neighborhoods where the young men never got a job.
But it's not the immigrant undocumented workers taking their jobs. They're not the culprit, and it sounds too much like that. And I hear it from my white union.
But
and to hear
you some black union workers.
And to hear it from African American workers that to me have mostly been a lot more enlightened than white workers.
Definitely.
It's very disappointing.
But doesn't it point to a truth that if you want, for instance, let's say you have this large neoliberal economic plan, take all the factories out, bust the unions, and bring in as many undocumented workers. Well, wait a minute. They just got here on their, millions just got here on their own.
Bring in people have, corporations can go all over the world, but workers cannot. I mean.
Well, yes.
And that takes me back to China, because I don't know anything about it. So I'm going to ask you, so you're going to help me out.
Okay, go ahead.
So when American corporations go to China and exploit workers, what was communism's role in that?
What was communism?
Yeah, in allowing American corporations to come exploit Chinese workers.
Well, the question is, what we call exploitation is probably a necessary stage in the economic development of a country like China. And as we know, these were special zones where foreign corporations operated. And they were regulated in the ways they treat the Chinese workers and the rights of the Chinese workers and so on. If you say that China should have taken the path only of state run corporations, that there should not have been this private sector, which was made up in a lot of ways of foreign capital, and thus you have a mixed economy for a transitionary period. That's the way I look at it. On the other side, world economic and labor relationships are not resolved by people from the poorest countries coming into a richer country and making already poor people who are citizens of that country even poorer.
Yeah, but
I hate to tell you, and that is what's, and that's
not what is causing the poverty of workers in our inner cities.
Well, that's why I said poor workers have even become more poor.
So why are people coming here from Central America?
Well, because they're coming from a poor country.
But why are they coming here?
To do better.
No, but why do they don't, people don't want to leave their countries. Why are they leaving?
Well, I don't know. I know the Venezuelans who want to leave their country
No,
for
every
all
single one
kinds
of
of
those
reasons.
Central American and South American countries.
Well, we'd have to ask.
No, we know it's because the U.S. went, they stabilized their governments and brought the military.
Definitely.
And
But so. in
it's
other-
the same reason
you-
why
you-
everybody came to the U.S. except people that were brought in chains. It's the same exact reason.
No, but this is, I think, it is impacting, I mean, look, we can go around Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And people, I know in the Black community, people are not against immigrants, especially brown immigrants. They're against a policy that floods the market for jobs at the lower unskilled levels with immigrants who have no rights, and therefore they can be more easily exploited.
Well, there's enough work for everybody. It's just that we don't allow undocumented workers to unionize. There's enough work for everybody. It's not that, what do they call it, zero sum, that you're here so we don't have work. No, there's enough work for everybody.
No, there is enough work for everybody, but we'd have to change the economic system.
Well, but
right now, the economic system does not provide enough work even for the people in this country, citizens of this country.
It's not that there's not enough work. People don't want to be exploited, so they don't join the labor force. But if undocumented workers can't unionize and can't unite with the other workers.
And that's why they're encouraged to come to the country, because they have no rights.
Well,
that's the way I feel. But let Shantanu come in. We could redo this. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think, because I was thinking during this conversation as well, I think my criticism, our criticism is, again, as Doc said, it's not against the actual people. It's never against the people, but it is towards a certain policy and certain administrative, regulations that make it so that, conditions exist where undocumented labor can come here, they're paid very low wages, and they occupy this low level of the workforce where it's service jobs, menial jobs. And it's a complicated situation, and it doesn't have a very clear solution except for a complete overhaul of economic conditions.
If you don't stop the American corporations and the military from going to Central America, that's the origin of it. So
Yeah,
it's not. I think it's so regressive to say, oh, we're against sanctuary cities. I mean, you're talking about humanity here, not economic systems. You were talking about the humanity of people supporting workers.
And I'm looking at, and I'm telling you, a lot of people understand immigrant labor better than they understand Black labor.
Mm-hmm. Or they understand.
I don't have to. It doesn't have to be one or the other. People who understand labor,
but some people,
it's not exclusive.
I understand,
Yeah.
but there are people
Yeah.
who, for all kind of reasons, can stand up for the immigrants, but do not understand. Hold, let me explain what I'm saying about this. I think there's a deficit of knowledge of exactly what's going on among these young Black men. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say they realize they're on a death march. Even the immigrants coming from El Salvador or Guatemala, wherever, as they march towards the United States, it's not like they're on a death march in the sense that they can almost see light at the end of the tunnel, even if they stay here only for a couple years to go back to their country or to send money back to their country, all of which is good. But, and I'll tell you, if we hung out and we walked and just looked, now I know I'm giving it a more literary kind of thing, but it is a death march. But
it isn't caused by immigrants.
No, I'm not saying it's caused by immigrants. I'm saying it's caused by corporations who want immigrant labor here to ensure that that Black workers, white workers do not work because they don't want them.
It's a task of organized labor.
But so
to-
what,
yeah.
what is your solution
So
then?
that organized labor makes sure that those
Well,
people that are
If we wait
undocumented,
for organized
they-
labor, we'd be waiting till the cows come. But see, the thing is that we have to have an understanding, I think, that the force, see, immigrant labor is not going to be a force for social change. They're not going to do that. The force for social change is right in front of us. It is that young man, that young black man, that young black woman who, yeah, please, they are going to be the force for change. The immigrant, by the way, let me just say, I'm the son of an immigrant. I know.
we all are. We're immigrants are just
we all are
surviving.
not.
That's all they're doing.
Some
Yeah.
of us are the children of slaves.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
but my point is that, you know, the ruling class probably kills two birds with one stone. It lowers the labor standards, the on the job, every standard of labor that people have fought for. And on the other side, you flood communities with people who are not going to fight for change because they don't have any rights and are afraid to stand up. But here you have, that's what I talked about, what the city looked like, you know, of the working class, of people standing up, building churches and, you know, broken. These are the forces for change. They have to somehow be re-won to the fight going forward. Immigrant labor is not going to do it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But young black men in the inner city, they don't, like you said, they don't see immigrant labor as their enemy. But
How do you know?
they're not going to be the change, like you said. But what about the
A lot of them
corporations?
see the Africans in West Philly as their enemy. They do.
But I mean, that's the exact same thing I hear from white people in my union.
Well, maybe you hear the same thing, but it ain't the same essence.
Yeah, it's foreigners taking our jobs.
Well,
Foreigners taking.
and they are. I have an example of that in Reading Terminal. It was just. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. You know, and I'm of the opinion that an immigrant arriving tomorrow would have an easier time getting a job than a young black man graduating from high school tomorrow.
I mean, I don't think anybody's debating that. It's the racism built into the country but it's not just racism, because even if you get a black immigrant from Jamaica, they're gonna get a job before an African American.
And why is that?
Because they're coming, because they're coming voluntarily as immigrants, and people of this African American descent were brought in chains. It's not voluntary. It wasn't voluntary migration. And there's the whole systematic oppression against that group of people. And there's a difference
why do
between
immigrants
immigrating and coming.
Make a decision.
Yeah.
Not make a decision that they not be confused with African Americans.
Say that again.
Why is it that immigrants, be they African, Jamaican, South American, Central American, one thing they learn quickly, make it clear that you're not an African American.
But they're not.
Well, but yeah,
They're not.
well, and that's the point.
But they're not.
But on the other side, when the Irish,
You can't be so.
this country,
Yeah.
came-
Yeah.
We have to think about the corporation. And the corporation, they want profits. And they will employ anyone that they can make the most profit from. And that has been the immigrant. And I don't know about Philadelphia, but I do know about Los Angeles, because I lived there for many years. And in 1978, the United States and Mexico made an agreement for cheap labor. They would import people from Mexico to Los Angeles for work. And they knocked out a lot of jobs. Because, I don't know, but say the I think at that time, I think it was people were getting like $4.50 an hour. And they would bring in the immigrant, and they would pay them $2.50 an hour. So they bigger and fatter pockets.
I mean,
For
it's
cheap labor.
always been the history from the beginning, the way when the Great Migration from the South, Black workers coming north were seen as the enemies, the scabs, and were used without being told, were put on trains to break scabs and to break in the, yeah.
And you know, and the beauty of it is, and that's why this thing of the Black struggle for freedom is that Black labor and community leaders intervened and called upon Black workers from the South who didn't know where they were coming, what was going, not to take the jobs of white workers, that we needed labor solidarity. And that's one of the great moments. That's because they were not without rights, even though they were second-class citizens, and they stood up for labor. And that's, I think, without that, you know, it is tragedy upon tragedy. In fact, I would say that many immigrants who come to this country, I have some that live in my neighborhood from South America, who are skilled enough to do construction and contracting work and have flatbed trucks and everything. And my former neighbors laying in the gutter, you know, drinking wine and shit. I mean, there is, you know, it was and is a system set up. I agree with what John said, to maximize profit, no matter who it hurts.
It's always been to play labor against labor, no matter from where.
But we fought against it, and that's why, and that laid the basis for the organization of the UAW in the 1930s. The fact that Black communities and Black workers said, no, we ain't gonna be a part of a scab system. We said that, but that's the way we are. You can't, wait a minute, you can't take the way we are, I'm talking about the Black worker, and say that's the same as a Central American worker.
I bet I would say that if W.E.B. Du Bois, right? And here's W.E.B. Du Bois, and here's what's the name of
Booker T.
Booker T. I guarantee you that W.E.B. Du Bois would be on the side of the Central American immigrants, and he would say your enemy are the corporations, are the bosses. It's not the immigrants.
No, he would say that.
He would definitely say it.
And I'm not saying, and I'm saying, of course, but you cannot. I think my point is clear. When I look at the devastation around Philadelphia, especially Black Philadelphia, and you look at that, and you say there's a lot of work to be done, there are a lot of people to be educated, there are a lot of workers to be put on jobs to rebuild this city, or to even just work in hotels or work in kitchens or somewhere, and ask them. I would ask you, not to ask me, ask some of those people. I'll say Black workers in particular now.
So I have this question. So you were talking about the culture, and I'm talking about now American culture and what it values and what it tells people is valuable or not.
Yes.
If I go out tomorrow, and I live in North Philly and I work in North Philly.
Well, we're in North Philly.
Well, I'm near Berks and well, it's not called North Philly anymore because it's gentrified, but it's like near American Street on Berk Street.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But working, and I worked for 6 years for the Philadelphia Housing Authority, servicing every part of the city for the people with the least resources. Okay.
Right.
Black men, Black women. If I go tomorrow and say, here, join a union that I'm in doing construction work, this society didn't teach people to value that. And it's also, I would be looked upon like, why are you telling Black people to do manual labor when they did it for free for I don't know how many years?
Black people would say that.
No.
I know a lot of Black people that want
to do construction.
Oh, God, yes. God, yes.
Hi, then you and I, we're gonna set it up so that we're gonna go in North Philly and we're gonna recruit young black men to enter the building trades.
You have those jobs for those people?
We can fight for them because look at the home, look, what's Mayor Parker, look at how many billions she's getting for the home project that is rebuilding the, public housing. It's all for public housing. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna give private contracts to their friends and put it in their pocket or whatever, but let's look it up. The Home Initiative, where Ryan Boyer from the Laborers Union, the head of the, yeah, okay. Where all that money that's gonna come to rebuild, who's getting those jobs?
Yeah, but see the
You have
point.
to have,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you have to have training to have those jobs.
Yeah, the apprenticeships. Yeah,
So when you have.
it's free training.
But that's been one of the historic battles here in Philadelphia.
Then we're fighting it.
No, that's why you have a Ryan Board. That's why you have other people in jobs in the carpenters union and yada, yada, yada. We fought for that, the Philadelphia plan and all this other
But
stuff.
that's not, that, you know
But
what
I'm just
percentage
saying-
of jobs is construction? It's nothing.
No, but I'm not
Yeah.
trying to make it, but let's get back.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to stay on this question
Yeah.
of labor.
Yeah.
And the destruction of labor in this country.
Yeah.
And it was a two-sided, maybe three-sided hit. It was the deindustrialization and the export of jobs out of the country. It was then also to bring non-citizen immigrant labor in to do the work at the lowest level of skill. They did it. I mean, I kind of have a visual of Chicago and the hotel workforce, let us say 30 years ago, and it was highly populated by Black workers, you know, housekeeping.
Unionized?
And they became unionized. And suddenly, gradually, if you go to Chicago, you see almost all Latinos working those jobs. How many of, yeah, I'm certain it's the same in Chicago. These were entry-level jobs for Black unskilled labor. I knew people like this. These were my neighbors, my relatives. Suddenly those jobs don't exist for us.
I don't agree. I think that there's enough work for everybody. It's just that we have people in
We decided
competition.
suddenly we don't want to work
No,
more?
it's because of the devaluation of the wages, because now you've got people, like you said, that don't have documents.
My point.
And people are like, I'm not gonna work for that amount of money, but the work is there. It's just that, so how do you fight it? The internationalization of the working class. For one, the unions have to fight for the workers and say, I don't care if you don't have documents, you're gonna join our union. That way you don't devalue and bring the wages down. Like,
See, but
what
we-
union
but
fights
before
for the,
the
for
union- unions
undocumented
don't fight
workers?
for much of anything.
No.
Yeah, unions, but I just say this,
Yeah,
in
I
the
agree
meantime-
that
yeah, we
that people don't
we
wanna work for
yeah,
less
we
money.
want the unification of the entire global working class. But in the meantime,
Well, what about in Philadelphia? All I'm saying is the work, or in Chicago, it's not that the work isn't there. It's that now if I'm not gonna want to work for this amount of money that you're paying
well,
these new
should
people.
I?
Well, no, but
That's the
how do you
point of
find it?
bringing in the immigrant.
But
Well,
how
how
do
do you fight it? Yeah, we know the ways to fight it, but are there forces?
It only comes from unity of the working class
Yeah,
together.
just as long as
That's
we
it.
acknowledge what the issue is. And I'm saying, if you say I sound like your white workers on your job, well, like I say, broke clock is right twice in a day. But there is something, and everybody admits it, even now the people who support it, that the immigration policy of this country damaged the working class.
There is no immigration policy.
Yes, it is.
It's always,
That was literally the whole point of
the
making it
immigration policy has gone, if you go to the beginning of the history of this country, it is the labor policy. It goes along where now we're gonna meet these people from Europe, now nobody from any Asian, African, Latin American country, it's illegal. China to build the railroads, look up what year they allowed and when they allowed certain countries to come in when they needed labor. But it's always been competitive, it's always,
But isn't, if I could just say one small thing.
yeah.
The period of industrialization and the period of deindustrialization. See, I think we're in two different periods. We're in a period of deindustrialization. I think we have to look, and this is what we want to do eventually. I mean, we're trying to get closer to doing, to understand that in Philadelphia, understanding these neighborhoods, understand, North Philly has been the manufacturing center of Philadelphia. It's also the place of the highest concentration of Black folk, which meant churches and factories and neighborhoods, but Black and white, but Black. So we are people that grew up placing a hope in the rise of the labor movement. They don't put it that way, but that's what with civil rights and everything.
Of course.
And to now, just with all workers, of course, but Black, to have that broken in this brutal way.
But the industry left, and when it left,
yes,
yeah.
But that's the two sides.
And it left
and
for
so
Black workers and also for some white workers.
For
too.
white workers, yeah. But see, it left. So then they say, go and get a job downtown in the hospital. Okay, I went downtown and got a job in the hospital. And if it don't be for Henry Nicholas and them, I would be up Schitt's Creek. But
even,
okay, I'm sorry.
No, but actually, I think it's important to talk about because even in the health services, because my union's healthcare, those service jobs are actually mainly taken, the lower paid health service jobs like in housekeeping, dietary, have mainly been, they used to be Black workers, African American, and now they're actually South American workers. And it's not because Black people don't want the jobs. Well, first of all, some of them actually don't want the jobs because why would they want to be mistreated? Like, why would they're like, I am still struggling and my union's not getting us enough wage increases. But also part of it is because the administration would rather have these undocumented immigrants who will not join the union. They made a choice not to join the union despite how much their Black coworkers try to get them to join the union because they just want to put their heads down, make their low wages.
I mean, they could be threatened with deportation.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
but
That's the ploy.
I mean, we know, everybody knows.
Yes. And then even the good jobs, the nursing jobs, where Black nurses had nursing jobs, are now being replaced with African nurses.
I mean, it's the same thing that white
Filipino.
workers say. It's the same. It's just American workers, okay, whether Black or white. So,
But
hypothetical.
what I am raising is there is what you're saying is true. There has to be unity. But the question is, it takes every person to pick up that responsibility to fight for unity.
So what would happen if suddenly unions decided to fight for, so that wages wouldn't be lowered, so that the undocumented workers, we don't care, we're representing them together with everybody else, they're part of unions. You think in a second they'll stop people from coming in? Is that gonna happen?
Well, can I respond? Can I just ask something? I think Tony or Doc gave an extensive overview essentially of poverty, but also of that it's not just an economic crisis, but a civilizational crisis. And I think what's happening here is I'm not quite sure I understand where you disagree.
Because if I see somebody with a mask and no ID, to me, that's not different from the KKK. That's the same thing.
Okay.
And like to talk of that, it's snatching people off the street and disappearing them without habeas corpus. That's what's happening every day. It's not. I mean, I don't even hear anybody talking about how they're terrorizing families, like wearing masks and no ID and snatching people and just disappearing them. That's horrendous. That's horrible. I don't even hear anybody here talking about that.
And what's your solution to that?
You're going to shame us now.
No.
I hear what you're saying.
I think this narrative, and actually we have a member of Free School that has talked about this previously. I think the situation with ICE is complex, and the question of immigration is also complex. I don't think we disagree on the fact that actually there are some disagreements. I think one point is that the solutions that free school is talking about is not just on a single policy level. I think what we're talking about is more broad about the civilizational values of the society. And just let me finish, because actually many of us in this table are children of immigrants, some documented and some undocumented to this country. And whether either of those paths, the children of many immigrants are raised to have white standards. And what that means is that you're taught actually to look down on Black folk. You're taught to look down on your parents and where they came from. And they're taught to aspire to white standards, which is to make money and only look out for yourself. And
well, that's American standards. I would say at this point.
No, so I think we agree on that part. And I think what we're raising, the question that we're raising in free school, is that the values of American society, but also immigrants that come to this country, many immigrants and the children of immigrants are not looking to improve American society. What they're looking to is to improve. I mean, I guess I was taught to just, be a good immigrant. Don't look at Black folk. Don't look at the problems of the society. Become rich. And then that's it. I think that's the larger question that we're asking. Yes, there are a lot of questions about documentation or ICE, but that's not really what we're talking about here. Like Emily and I, a couple weeks ago, we did see someone and we don't know the story of that family. But the thing is, there are people in free school who are the children of undocumented immigrants. And actually, their parents or family members have been deported back to their countries. And they're much happier in their countries because many immigrants in these countries, in America, face substandard conditions of working, of living, and all the things that we were discussing. And on top of racism, but at the same time, while you're looked down by white society, you're also looking down on Black folk in this country who have fought for the rights of immigrants to this country, which is the civil rights or the amendments, the 13th, 14th, 15th amendments that have laid the basis for all citizens.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is disagreeing with with the
that's
contributions of Black America in terms of civil rights, in terms of labor rights, in terms of culture, in terms of music, everything. The best of America comes from Black America. I don't think anybody's debating that.
So I'm saying, what is your disagreement with free school? Because this is
not a disagreement with free school. I'm just saying that I hear so much about.
I think you're projecting.
Yes, because I come from a majority white union. And so when I hear from my majority white union things about immigrant workers that are usually, brown skinned or whatever, as being, the downfall of this society in this country, I never really hear that from Black workers. There is no. No, I mean, there's a gamut. There's a gamut of
not that they hate immigrants, but there is something, I could see Black people feel a certain way. You gonna come in this country and you can get a job before I can get a job. Right. You understand what I'm saying? You can get benefits.
But I think they're sophisticated enough to know that that's because of the white racist people that run it.
Well, they do know that. They're going to say, but the white people are using you against me.
But they know who to blame. They know who to blame.
Yeah, I know, but they're going to still say, look, well, you know this. It's the normal reaction. If you come in, I could tell you, you could see immigrants driving flatbed trucks, doing construction all over the place. And a lot of Black, well, how do they get that?
You know how? I see them working 16 hours a day.
Oh, because they work hard.
So, no, not because they work hard, because they're exploited because they work Monday through Sunday, 16 hours a day. And Black people are not going to put up with that because they shouldn't.
Yeah, but that's
they shouldn't.
The ruling class brings. Okay, but I'm not going to say. But you see, I think
I don't know any Black neighbors that want to or white that want to work 7 days a week for 16 hours, and they shouldn't.
Ain't going to do
and
it.
They shouldn't. Yeah.
And nobody should do it. And don't y'all come in here doing it.
Well,
because
they're gonna do whatever they gotta do to survive to feed their family. They're gonna do whatever.
They're not doing that to feed. You're not going to. Okay, when you use one group from somewhere else to take the dignity and rights away from another group, especially a group of people like blacks.
That's what capitalism does. It plays in competition, people against each other.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we do know that, but don't be a willing tool against me.
So we're gonna call now immigrants tools?
A lot of them are, yes. That's the whole point of it. Open the borders. Why they? Because their hearts bleed so much for the Venezuelans. They care, the ruling class cares so much about them. Oh, we have to open our country up and we have to give them.
No, they want to exploit labor. We all know that.
But okay, yeah.
Well, I want to exploit black people.
Well, can I just jump in here because you said something illustrative to me because I used to be an anarcho-syndicalist.
I didn't know
meaning, I was very supportive of unions. But something that convinced me to.
I thought anarchists did not support unions.
Anarcho-syndicalists, where you sort of like an IWW where you form.
Yeah, but those aren't the unions we have. We have business unions, and we don't have.
Regardless, I was very friendly to unions.
Yeah.
But something you said about so we have borders open to capital. Why can't we have borders open to people?
No, if capital can move freely,
yes.
Why can't workers move freely?
And that's the logic of the Reagan administration and the George W. Bush administration. Because you'll recall in 2008, George Bush, one of his policies, he was much more friendly than today's Democrats on immigration. He wanted a worker program from Mexico to California.
Yeah, but not by the workers. Not by the workers.
As we discussed, it's never for the workers.
Yeah.
So
it is for the workers, but not by the workers. It's never by the workers.
Well, it's not by the workers. It's not for the workers. It's
I know. It's
neoliberalism.
Yeah.
And, we've equated the policies of neoliberalism with deindustrialization and shipping jobs out of cities. So I think that the unions, and one of the reasons why I'm not pro-union anymore, is because I've seen how they've cozied up to the corporate interests. And, sort of the logic, what you said, well, what do we do? Do we shut our doors? I'm not saying we shut our doors to immigrants, and I'm not for ICE. And we can point the problem back to American imperial policy, all the way back to the Monroe Doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone here knows this, and we all agree about this. And so, but the issue is, the union policy and the policies of deindustrialization. Like I said, I'm an anarchist. I remember, I think about Seattle in the 2000s. Well, I don't say. I was thinking in the 2000s when the World Trade Organization came to Seattle. I know what side I'm down. But what you said about you sound like my white union members. I'm not saying your white union members are perfect, but I wish more anarchists talked to union members and talked to them and trusted them about what do the people say. Because I do hear, people coming from deindustrialized towns saying, yeah, we don't want immigration anymore. And, I'm not saying you should be anti-immigrant, but there are different, you laid it out perfectly. There are different types of immigrants. They're documented, they're, tenuous, they're undocumented, they're children of immigrants. I have a friend, one of my best friends from school, he's in immigration and with the government, and he said, there's a million, type of situations. That's part of the problem. Is something needed to happen, and the immigration system broke. It's not the workers' fault. We're not blaming them, but we need to be against these policies, and the workers are already against these policies. They are leading the way against the deindustrialization.
Well, in the fourth deindustrialization, it's just that they're gonna let all of us die and kill all of us because they don't think they need workers with the AI. So
we gotta unite.
But the ball is not only in their court. It's not only on them. But Emily wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah.
This is a rich discussion, by the way.
Well, it's rich because in some ways we're talking about the whole idea of what you started with, Doc, of that we're at a point of one of the worst crises that America has ever faced, which is why it's so important to understand, like you said, both deindustrialization and the cost of war, the cost of empire, the cost of preparing for war. But actually, the thing that really struck me, what you said, Doc, was that the thing to take seriously today is to see actually that the real deal was the breaking of the working class, like the breaking of the Black working class in particular, like, and not just the industrialization, but all the like ripple effects that then gutted lower into the Black working class. The destruction of not just jobs, like taking away of jobs, and then the lowering of wages and the increase of unemployment, but then incarceration, drugs, militarization of police, the like disembowelment of the education system, and that we're at a point, like you said this thing where you're like, we're at a point of an irreversible crisis that can't be resolved on the system's own terms, which makes it a civilizational problem. Or in some ways, I really like the phrase of what we have is a human problem. And it's a human problem that requires a human solution, which is another way of saying like the way David Brooks said, the primary context today is psychological, almost spiritual. That we're on a level of like, if there is to be a future, if there is to be even a human struggle for a human future, we're even going to have to understand what is the state of the working class? Like, what have become to these young people? That the deep devastation, like Docky kept saying, the death march of young Black men who should actually be such a large active part of not just work, but even society, community, culture, what Du Bois calls human culture, human civilization. And there's something deep that like Du Bois says where he actually always brings it back to democracy, where he's like, we all agree that democracy should mean that all people are equal. And he's like, well, we have to face the facts in America that all people are not equal. And the reason why we're not equal is because of both white supremacy, but then also the reality that because of white supremacy, you do end up with people who are far uneducated than other people. You do end up with people who are more depressed, mentally unwell than other people. All people are not equal in America. And so he says we should redo even what we understand to be democracy, the thing to fight for, the ideal that we should be fighting for, which is that every person, oh shit, I'm gonna fuck it up. He says that it should be the ability of every human being to contribute to culture, for the ability for every human being to contribute to civilization, like for there to be opportunity, like the loosening of possibilities to increase to almost 100% that every human being would be able to not just have a job, but to be able to contribute to life itself. And basically, I mean, the thing I always ask is basically like, what is the actual barrier? What is the actual barrier of preventing people from all being part of this great movement to contribute to civilization? And I actually think it's the ideology of white supremacy, and also the fact that human beings in America do not interact with each other as human beings. We interact with each other based upon race, we're mediated by.
No, we interact with each other because we're as commodities too. That's how we interact with each other.
I think it's actually I actually think it's that we're mediated by standards and values and ideas of ourselves and other people based upon whiteness. I actually don't think it's just it's not just based upon commodities.
But it's not one or the other. They always go together. In this history of this country, you can't separate class and race.
No, I think that's true, but I do think the motivating force, like, okay, for example, why is it that there are actually such things as Black jobs? There's a special category carved out of jobs, which is Black jobs. And we're at a point where the category of Black jobs is sometimes having.
Wait, wasn't that Trump who said that? Who was it that said that during the campaign?
Well, I think Du Bois also says that.
No.
This white supremacist system creates special categories of jobs that Black people can have and nothing else. And it's only.
But now it's for immigrants, right?
No, but,
okay.
But the whole point is, I do think the whole point is that if we're going to have a united movement to even reconstitute society itself, not just like new types, not just like that everyone has a right to a job, everyone has a right to live, but even this thing of like a new standards of what's considered to be beautiful, what's considered to be just. Like that would require the human beings like you, me, for us to even before we can even imagine a different economic system, it requires us to get on the same page of like, what are the standards and from who? What are the standards and values that would make us not even trust each other, but create a society that people can trust, that people would want to be want to actually have a job in or participate in. And I think that's like what we're talking about when we say like, this is a human problem. Because even take China. I don't think China has a human problem the way that in America, we're confronting a deep civilizational human problem. Because in China, even if like, okay, for example, in China, you can actually trust that the government, you can actually trust because you have to see the evidence that a village in China can go from people being, not even having a pair of pants to suddenly 10 years later, like it's actually a true story because my grandpa comes from it, which is you can have a village where it's one household only has one pair of pants to suddenly there being subways because there's jobs where you can actually trust that the government is like, we may suffer for decades, but we're seeing the evidence. We can trust that the government is for the people and actually is transforming society. Whereas in America, the task, it's up to the people.
But in the beginning of industrialization in the 1900s, that same transformation happened here where people that didn't have anything suddenly had something. I mean, it's the same thing if you go to Puerto Rico, like I think it was if you go and you look at pictures of people, most people didn't even have shoes.
Are you looking for things to just like?
Yeah.
You're just looking for talking points.
Yeah, I always do that. I'm like very
I don't think
combative.
Oh no! I don't think that's a way
No,
of actually coming on.
I'm very argumentative because like
Yeah.
like I've always been like that. I like to ask.
But we're not
yeah.
trying to just have
Yeah.
an argument for the sake of
Oh no,
argument.
but it's not just for the sake of
No,
it.
I know.
It's for my understanding too.
I know that
It's for my understanding.
Everybody feels the stakes involved, but
Yeah.
I think it's like if it's always just like you coming back with like, oh, but what about this? Oh, but what about?
Well,
It's like
that's how we think. Like we have
No,
questions. I do. I have questions. Like that's how I think. Like suddenly, if I think, wait, that doesn't fit in the way I don't understand it, I'm going to ask a question.
Right.
I ask
But
questions.
see, I think you proceed from a certain set of assumptions.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you have a general view of the working class, but I would argue
Yeah.
that you do not understand the specifics
Okay.
of the crisis that the working class, and let's just take this city is facing. We could also say in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's all, and I think.
I mean, there's a lot that I don't understand, and that's
it's
why I
lot
joined a
that-
group like this.
No,
Yeah.
it's a lot that
Yeah.
none of us understand. This is a wholly new condition.
Yeah.
I would say that we would be less predisposed to a Marxist understanding, which could have fit a period in history, but is not equipped for this moment. And the immigration question is a huge question. No other country in the world, I don't think, faces an immigration problem like this one. You could say, well, maybe Germany taking on all of these Syrian immigrants during the Syrian war. But I don't think that any country had just lowered its walls and said, come on in, et cetera. So there's something going on here. We're not going to answer it today. I think we have a point of view. There's something going on here that's completely unusual and abnormal. I agree with what Emily said. Working people, based upon their own experiences, have arrived at certain conclusions. Oh, you're allowing all these immigrants to come in because you want to undermine our conditions of life. And I know for most Black people, you can go out to Southwest Philadelphia. They're not all that welcome. Oh, all y'all Africans, come on in. They're not, because until you have secured the economic conditions of your own citizens, the ruling class of this country has no right to open the borders up and say, well, immigrants from South America, maybe from Haiti and other places, come on in, because we got some work for you to do. And we will provide certain social services for you to help you over the hump. And Black folk won't help you over the hump. What about me? Yeah, and so it is, yes, competition, but it is to construct a situation where it's untenable for the working class of this country in its own interest, given the conditions that it must fight under right now, to say, no, we want all the immigrants to come in, and it would take a Herculean task. It's going to take some time. I don't think we can ever send back all of the undocumented workers to wherever they came from, and I don't think that should even be put on the table. However, we just can't survive this. I know the poor sections of the working class cannot survive it. It's existential.
Well, also, yeah, it's 2:30, so maybe we should, because usually we end at 2, so maybe we should end now, and then we should pick up from the remarks, which I think are really important. So we can pick that up.
Yeah, we can keep, and then we're gonna, start going around the city. We're gonna start with North Philly. North Philly is most people don't understand North Philly. It is the manufacturing center of the city since about the end of the 1800s, and how that overlaps with Black life, with the fight for unions, to be in unions, and so on and so forth. But we want to look at the conditions.
So what more relevant than the DC 33 strike? These are black men that make the least with the most essential work that we can't live without. And look how they got sold out.
That's right. There's no question about it. We want to look at that. We want to look at the collapse.
Where's the solidarity from, say, DC 47 that was supposed to negotiate at the same exact time and pushed it 2 weeks back?
What about solidarity from the building
All
trade?
of them. They don't believe in that.
No. So we're not. Yeah. So therefore, one of the things we talk about is a movement of a new type, a different kind of movement. This is going to be a very touchy situation going forward, because there's so many variables operating at the same time. You got war, you got genocide, you got all, this huge government debt, all of this, crisis upon crisis, and et cetera. And that's one of the things we were trying to get at here. It could get so bad that there's nothing to fight for left.
Yeah.
And if there are no people, if the pride of the working class is taken away, I don't know, are you from here?
No, I'm from Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. See, I'm from here.
Yeah.
And I got, there's stories that I'm always telling them about my family, my mother, my father, all of that, my neighbors. I knew what a proud working class looked like. Not that they were rich even, but proud.
I mean, they gave us U.S. citizenship just so they could bring cheap labor to New York, and so that they could have people to fight World War II.
You feel me?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, and my father's side are immigrants.
Yeah.
I know about that.
Yeah.
I know how Black immigrants from an African country try to act like they ain't Black. And so it's that you can be anything, but don't be Black. You understand? That still remains a principal obstacle for the working class to overcome. You can't have a conscious working class that at the same time identifies itself as white.
But yeah, what a contradiction, because everybody wants to be Black, because Black people set the culture.
Well, this is a very important point. And part of the solution to the problem is everybody becoming like Black people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That is to say, discard whiteness altogether.
The American culture is Black culture.
Well, the working class culture is increasingly Black culture. I would say that is so. That's why I disagree with the movie Sinners, by the way.
So what is the point of the movie centers? Tell me.
No, that's another time. That's for another day.
We'll refer you to the preschool.
Do you do YouTube?
I like the visuals and I like
No,
the
but-
camera work and I like, yeah.
But we do.
So we also, yeah, so like Doc mentioned, we're gonna restart the reading group at Lucian Blackwell Library in West Philly. And so to kick off the reading group, Doc is going to do a public lecture on August 5th, Tuesday, at 4:30 at Lucian Blackwell, which is about the question of Black God, the deindustrialization, art, and a lot of the things that we talked about. But then the following Tuesday, we'll have our public reading group starting there, which we've been doing for years.
Am I losing you?
Yeah, I watched it, but somebody told me that the reason why they had the white people were supposed to be Irish people that had also had their lives sucked out of them.
Yeah.